Alright, folks, be forewarned. This is going to be a long life of email. So if you just sat down and were like, I'll listen to Alex's life of email the next hour, then, amend that to like an hour and a half, or potentially more, because this is super long. 22,000 words. I gotta stop making these so long. Anyway, yeah, just prepare. Mentally prepare yourself. Going from the point of last Life of Email's email coverage, I literally woke up at 10 and then did nothing but write Life of Email until literally 8 at night. Like, I took 2 hours of break time for food and stuff, and yeah, that was it. It was just a lot of writing. But then again, what should I have expected? I put the email off until spring break, so I guess that's what you get. Once I finally finished that behemoth, my aunt Hillary arrived from California for some Bethel Mission Trip stuff, I think. Though I hardly talked to her because she had to leave, or no, I had to leave at that very instant because I was, going to go to the Vibe session, which was previously ordained by the heavens. Though I suppose the heavens were not the biggest fan of their ordainment because they were gently weeping the whole time me and Grace trekked over the Myers. But honestly, like, the drizzle made it so much better. Like, the world was just steeped in the smell of rain. Petra something? I don't know. It's like Petra Cubes or something like that. And it was just glorious. Plus, it was a pretty temperate night to boot. So yeah, Grace and I drove to pick up the Myers, and things got a little bit discombobulated, and ironically, we actually showed up late to Southgate, when originally we were stalling because we would have been early, so that was kind of funny. Anyway, I gathered the Willing Myers in the car, and then we drove to Southgate, and that's where I was joined by Noah and Renee, Grace's friend, which I don't think she's been mentioned prior to this point, actually. Interesting. And yeah, we all drove up the canyon, playing loud music and smelling the glory of petrichor. There it is, because that's technically what rain smells called, and it was great. However, once we got up there, we found some people were sleeping in a camper near where I had planned to set us up, so we decided to actually spread out near the river instead. And man, it was actually such a better spot. Like, the sound of the river just doing its thing made it a great atmosphere. Like, fantastic. I mean, you couldn't see the stars. That was the one sad thing. But it was still a super nice time overall. Plus, I had previously put together a playlist with all my favorite instrumental songs from the tragic, peaceful, lighthearted, and so forth playlists, and it just made the vibe session like so much better because I loved every single song. So yeah, I really enjoyed the time, and it was really amazing. I think the three girls were kind of distracted, and Ben actually fell asleep. So I don't know who actually invibed the vibe session, but I personally really enjoyed it, even if the others did not get as much out of the experience, and that's all good. So yeah, the vibe session ended, and just as the rain was starting to pick back up, actually. And then we went back home, and we sung in the car on the way back, and it was great. I think I need to appreciate that I have people around me that are willing to drive into the canyon, sit in silence, and listen to instrumental music. Like, it's kind of a weird idea, They're odd people to do that. But yeah, I mean, I'm grateful. Just saying it's kind of an odd request. Once I got home, I then packed up for the long journey I was about to embark on soon, and then I promptly slept because it was late. The next day, I woke up and began my aforementioned journey. See, Neo, Noah, and I had decided to go to the hell of a conference. That's actually the title. It's called A Hell of a Conference. All the way in Wisconsin, in a large part because Rashi would pay for our room and board as well as our conference fee. So all we had to do was get ourselves out there, aka gas. I mean, for me, the fact that the payment was not sufficiently motivating was. Wait. Ah, I see. So, what I'm trying to say, this is where Joe used to be useful. Joe! What I'm trying to say is the payment of my fees was not sufficiently motivating. But the motivating factor, because I didn't actually care for the conference, was that I got to go to a drive 16 hours each way with Neo and Noah. So, yeah, as far as I was concerned, I got a pretty good deal because I spent 32 hours driving and 48 hours at a conference. Though, it seems kind of dumb to, drive 32 hours to spend 2 days at a conference, which I grant. But for me, that was the good arrangement because that's what I was going for anyway. So why, might you ask, did I want to go for the drive? Well, because very long drives are one of the best conversation conduits in existence. I mean, you still have to make, a conscious effort to not fall prey to the siren's call of music podcasts, but given those conditions obtained, deep conversations are all but guaranteed. Plus, it's also the perfect breeding grounds for lecturing. See, I did Catholic Talk Part 1, like, way back, and Neo had been pushing for Catholic Talk Part 2, and thus, with the captive audience, I bestowed such talk upon them. But not only did I bestow it upon them, I also had them memorize it. And it took them, like, a bit, but they actually did manage to do it pretty well. However, at least for Neo, I'm pretty confident the knowledge he had learned was totally compartmentalized. Because there have been a number of occasions where we're at Ratio, and there was something relevant to what I had told him to memorize and what he had memorized previously. And so I'm like, ooh, he's going to use his superior knowledge and he's going to be awesome! And then he'll just answer as if he never heard Catholic Talk Part 2. So I'm like, a little bit disappointed, But what can you do? All you can do is tell people things. If they, for some reason, don't remember it, that's on them. Anyway, Catholic Talk Part 2 was given, and at least partially absorbed, and other conversations were had to be sure. And we also stopped on the Archway Museum on the way, by the way. See, there's like this Ye Old America museum that goes literally over the highway. It's like an arch. And it was kind of like a spur-of-the-whim thing. But I was like, we should do that. So we did. Honestly, probably one of the best museums I've been to. I mean, to be fair, I've been to very few museums. But it had an escalator. So, I had to go in once I saw it had an escalator. And honestly, the thing was pretty well done. It was interactive, and it was like a walkthrough museum where you had a lot of like audio devices, and there were lots of life-size models of things, and very little reading. Plus, there were very, very realistic wax figures. Like, creepily realistic. There were definitely a few times when I turned around and was like, oh, look, someone else is here. Only to be like, oh, yeah, that's a wax figure. So yeah, the place would be a very good place for a horror film, now that I think about it. Anyway, the point is, it was a quality museum, and I enjoyed it. It was evening by the time we made our first stretch of the drive complete. See, Neo's parents actually live in a convenient halfway point in Lincoln, Nebraska, so we decided that, at least on the way there, we would stay with them for the night once we, got halfway. Thus, we met up with Neo's dad at a burger place, and he treated us to burgers, which was very nice. And then we drove to their house, which was really close. And also really cozy. I actually really liked their house aesthetic. It was, like, super clean without much open space. So, like, I know usually people like big open space houses, but I don't know, it just felt like cozy. I think cozy is the word. So, yeah. Once we got there, Neo caught up with his folks and got some Pokemon Go tips, and Noah and I played some games of Magic. Then, once his parents headed to bed, he joined us, and we all played Magic till about 11 or so. And I must say, Neo and Noah are some of my favorite people to play Magic with. Like, they both have really good attitudes, and they don't get salty, and it's just great. Then, once that ended, we made our way to bed, and I started trying to fall asleep about midnight. Keyword there being trying. Also, I'm still, like, recovering from a cough, so my voice was probably going to be, like, a little more maintenance-y than normal. Thus, I'll be taking frequent drinks of water, as I'm about to do right now. You ready for this? Look at that, a drink of water. So yeah, it turns out Neo's parents had purchased demon cots, and they were very skilled at their craft of torture. See, they're high-level demons, so they seemed good and pure, like all good high-level demons do. The cots, bless their soul, were slanted upward near the head, so that, in theory, one could not even need a pillow to enjoy the pleasant night's sleep. And not only that, but they were also concave, kind of like a hammock, so as to envelop your body and bring it safely to sleep. Or so the demon cots wished one to believe. But in truth, the very features that drew one to them were actually the instruments used to torture the souls of those that were unfortunate enough to fall prey to their deception. So you see, the incline of your head necessitated one head slant upward, bending near the abdomen, as I'm sure you would understand. Like, it was a slant that started around your abdomen area. So, that's already kind of uncomfortable. But then, what was really impressive is that the demon cots simultaneously provided enough slant that if you use a pillow, your head would be angled up at an uncomfortable angle, and at the very same time, an insufficient enough slant that you could not rest your head on the cot itself without craning one's neck downward. Thus, pillow or no, the demon cots ensured your neck would be at a very uncomfortable angle. And I think you're beginning to see why there's no ordinary demon cots. But that's not all. In addition, the cots were also very narrow, about the width of my shoulders, should I lay flat on my back. And they were also short, such that my knees had to bend so as to not dangle my feet over the edge. Thus, the curvature of the canvas kept in mind, when I wished to sleep on my side, my knees, which I'll remind you, needed to be scrunched due to the cot's inadequate length, ended up being at an upward angle of about 30 degrees or so, while the length of my body was kept on the cot. Thus, my knees extended beyond the side and, of course, were elevated. Hence, in total, my hips were rotated due to my knees, my spine angled because of the slant, my neck craned because of the pillow or lack thereof. All of which, in total, as you might imagine, resulted in a very torturous night's sleep. And by sleep, I mean basically not sleeping. I got very little sleep. Why did I not flee my cot captors and find refuge on the carpeted floor? I shall never know. But, for some reason, during my agony, such a thought never crossed my mind. Now, of course, this all begs the question. Why would a holy and loving cot factory create such evil cots? Well, after much thought, I have come up with what I deem a convincing theodicy. See, if one were to presuppose that humans have a telos to sleep on their back, and that the cots, then, with their bizarre properties, would all make sense, one would not need to turn one's hips for one's knees to not be over the side, but instead they would be down the center line. The angle of one's spine would be a comfortable one, as the spine, naturally bends toward the front of the abdomen, and the back of such a person's head would rest nicely against the sloped canvas. In fact, features like the concave nature of the canvas and the sloping of the cot would not only be permissible in such a case, but, in fact, be good in such a state. And, of course, the good and loving cot factory knew this. Sorry. And thus created the cots for our good. But we have, through our free sleeping posture, corrupted the good cots and turned them into a great evil, all the while blaming the cot factory as if it were not our own choice. that brought upon us this evil agony. And so, that sleepless night I discovered two things. First, that demon cots are not really demon cots, and that the demons we perceive around us are often of our own creation. And second, slanted cots suck. They are actually the worst. Next time you see a curved cot, find some gasoline and a match, and then just watch it burn. Trust me, the owner of the cot, had he ever slept in it, would thank you, and maybe give you compensation for the great good you brought to the world. Those cots were just the absolute worst. Anyway, all that to say, I got really bad sleep that night for amply explained reasons, and thus ended up sleeping like 3 hours or less. I don't know. It was probably less. Hence, I was sleep deprived upon waking the next day. Thus, after a few morning pleasantries, we got on the road again, but instead of doing Catholic Talk Part 3, due to my condition of sleep deprivation, we instead heard the great tale of Neo. He gave his life story. And it took like 7 hours, so it was pretty thorough. And that was one of my personal goals for the trip, because, while I've known Ian for a long time, I haven't actually had very many deep conversations with him. So it was good to, check that off the bucket list. The reason why Neo and I haven't had made deep conversations is Neo and I just kind of found each other. I didn't, hunt him down like I did a lot of my friends. And thus the question weaving stage, which I've gone through with most people, never happened. So yeah, I just kind of got to hear his story in more detail, and that was really good. As that was wrapping up, we finally reached the conference early. The thing that was wrapping up was Neo's tale of his life. We found our rooms, and a notable deficit of towels, if absences can be perceived, as Jean-Paul Sartre claimed when he said the absences were perceivable. So towels, when they're absent, are perceivable, apparently. Anyway, we got situated, and then we attended the conference, and heard one of the speakers talk on postmortem opportunity, though it wasn't really a hell talk per se, it was more like a let's make hell a bit nicer talk. After that, I then played chess with Ethan, and got soundly beat the second game. The first game was close, though. He was just a little better than me, and, that was humbling, because I don't like losing, but, that's life. And then we got to sleep, and it was okay. However, Ethan decided that vaulting himself from the top bunk was the best way to ascend and descend from his resting place, but said vaulting was not conducive to my personal rest. So that was a downside. Not for him, but for me. Although I didn't say that. Mostly because I kept thinking, that's the last time he'll do it. He'll realize he's waking all of us up by shaking the cots violently, But then I was wrong most times, except the last time, of course. Then I was right. The next day was just listening to speakers doing the speaking, which was actually a lot better than I thought it would be. And we kind of listened to our talks for RC development as well, like little conferences it has to do. And those were a lot worse than I expected them to be, so it kind of all equaled out. They did give us good food, though, and that was a perk. Plus, seeing the nerds around me made me feel super normal, which was great. There were people literally with full hoodies and dresses that just screamed anime. They had anime characters plastered across the whole hoodie or dress, which I found simultaneously a little bit cool, but also mostly disconcerting. I am nothing on the weeb scale compared to some of those people. Still, once again, getting this sneaking suspicion that I never had a choice in my hobbies, and rather I've just fallen into the nerd rut, which was secretly controlled over me from the shadows all this time, and which I may never escape from. Either that, or One Punch Man is just a really good show, and people like it. Whichever is true, I nevertheless didn't talk to said weebs, because I wasn't really much of a talker in this person. It wasn't really a social environment. Everyone kind of stuck to their own native Rasho group, and it was cliquey. That evening, as dinner approached its end, Noah, Neo, and I decided it would be best to head out instead of staying for the last night, because both Noah and I had school the day after, once we got back, and, the way things were going, it wasn't like we were going to miss that much. Plus, if we had left the desired time we were going to leave, the earliest we would get home would be by midnight, which is not a good way to start the school day after spring break. Thus, we left early, so we could stop over at Neo's parents' house once again and get a good night's sleep before the school begun. Hence, we departed. On the way back, I gave my final part of the Catholic Talk Part 3, which was justifiably a very sobering talk. Only those who heard Catholic Talk Part 3 would know, but the predicament is not a rosy one. However, after 4 hours of that, Neo was called by a wife in distress, and thus that occupied a good portion of our time. Then we divulged into some more personal topics, the content of which I cannot divulge. And, we got to Neo's house, and around 4 at night, and that was when we went to sleep. And I was spared the cot this time, because they did have one bed, which Neo took the first time, but due to my ample complaining about the cot, people were generous enough to let me not sleep upon them again, because they were actually evil. And thus, I slept beautifully, embraced by an angel bed instead of a demon cot. The next morning was chill. We then went on our way, and Noah and I gave our life stories. However, oddly, I didn't enjoy sharing it. Perhaps it was I felt that Neo wasn't really listening, or I don't know, maybe something else. But either way, I just didn't really enjoy the process. Regardless, I did do my due diligence, and I told my tale. And then we arrived back at home, and it was a good trip overall. And I definitely was happy to be home, because, home is good. Upon my arrival, I did my best to relax. I showed Mom One Punch Man, which is actually way more sketch than I remembered. I mean, it's really funny, but I can't recommend the show in good conscience because it's way more sketch than I remembered. Anyway, regardless, the time was enjoyable and I felt relaxed, and I didn't do much else that day. But that's how the day went, and I got a good night's sleep. The next day, I got to sleep in, which was a novelty, but also very good. I then regained the regime and routine wherein I worked, did school, had a typical day, and once I got home, I attended a family dinner, after which I went to Ratio and taught Sean and his girlfriend some Thomism. Because, being Catholic, Thomism is like your philosophy. The following day, I did school, and though the day was a bit different from others, I got to have the pleasant surprise text from Jake about asking for arguments for God's existence, so that was cool. I then did more work and more school, and once I got home, I went to Joe's house for Tuesday night things, and I did some stuff and some magic card things, and I also compiled all my decently okay papers, and was disappointed to discover I've only written like 58. And I actually thought it'd be a lot more than that. And I mean, like, yeah. I have more, but not that are any good. I've only written 58 that are, like, potentially acceptable. Not like they're all good. They're, like, just like, well, that could be informative to someone that's really dumb, or, that isn't technically completely wrong. So, yeah, I need to work on improving that count and write more papers. Anyway, I compiled those, and for those interested, let me know, and I can send you the list. After I finished that, I played some more Magic, and then we all went on the drive, just like the good old days. However, the drive was actually not that good, and that was the end of the day. The next morning, I took a little time to start working on making a face decoration for my clock. I spent like an hour and a half, but it only got me 1% credit, so in hindsight, that was definitely a waste. Regardless, I spray painted some metal pieces and went to math tutoring as they dried. Once I got to math tutoring, I was literally the only student there, so I basically got a private lesson from Anthony, my Captain America-esque math teacher. Honestly, he is really good at explaining math. Like, very good. I actually got to talk to him about his, life story, and he had a pretty interesting tale. Like, apparently he's a math prodigy. He just instinctively gets math, and he's, basically getting his PhD in math because it's just so easy for him. But funnily enough, he actually would have gotten his degree way earlier, but it just so happened while in high school, he asked his math teacher what was beyond calculus, and his math teacher was like, I don't know if there's anything beyond calculus. And so Anthony actually pursued a different degree for like 2 years because he thought he conquered all of math. And it was only, by happenstance he encountered linear algebra or something, and then he realized there was way more math out there to learn. So he actually dropped his degree halfway through and got a math degree. Like, kind of a crazy story. Especially because if, he'd done a tiny bit of research and not just taken his high school math teacher's word for it, he wouldn't have wasted 2 years of his life. But I guess that goes to show you how, influential high school math teachers are. They really do mold the rising generation. I wonder how many things like that exist for me. Like, how many ways I've been shaped by the people, around me without even knowing it. And, how different it would be if I hadn't been in that way shaped. It's an interesting counterfactual to ponder, and at the same time, a completely unprofitable one, because I'll have no idea. Have you ever thought about it'd be really interesting if you could just, simulate counterfactuals? Like, you could just run a simulation to find what would actually happen if you did, try and outrun a cop in your 2100 court. That's a purely random example. I wonder if, knowing that sort of thing would actually help you in the long run? Because, you'd be able to avoid bad situations. Or if you just, spend so much of your time running, mental situations, you actually failed to do good things because you were just, living in a fantasy world that never existed. I don't know. Yeah. Not like any of this is relevant to the topic at hand, but there you go. Free food for thought. You're welcome. It's a gourmet dish. Moving on, after talking with Anthony, I went home, I ate my equivalent of breakfast, and watched some It's fine. Yep. I then did work, studied something. I don't quite remember what I did. And then I went and did more work. And finally, I took some tests I can't remember. And anyway, once I showed up at Neo's house, we did our usual hangout time. We finished Paging Moriarty. Finally. And then once I got home, I finished my extra credit clock face before going to bed. I need to blow my nose. And fix that over there. And see, this won't be cut because I don't have a jet. So. You're deeply welcome for that reassuring audio. I'm not going to fix it. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. Thursday, I had class. I worked on doing the finishing touches for my clock since, my 11A class was canceled that day at the last minute. I then walked into the lab, turned in my clock, and finally put an end to that project of death. The course, was only a 1-credit course, but it had been actually so much work. I don't know how they assess credits, but clearly they need to rethink their metric, because I had so much more work in that class than, any other class. Let's see. After that, I finished the anime I was watching, and that was great because it was a really bad anime. and I should have just stopped watching it, but I finished it because I was like, well, I finished what I started. It wasn't like sketch bad, it was just poorly made. Anyway, after that, I then proceeded to go and do an escape room with Morgan. So there's this cool bar that has escape rooms in the basement, and they're like kind of mini escape rooms half the time and a little bit easier puzzles. But honestly, the one we did was pretty good. The room was clue-based, so we had to deductively rule out which people, were doing the murdering, the weaponing, and the placing. And once we failed, we were a little bit sad. But we did get really close. There were 2 clues we didn't get. And one was under a rug. I don't know why I didn't check under the rug. But anyway, the only reason we didn't get them was partially dumb, because another thing was like, we can't see the laser. It's not relevant. Anyway, it was a good time, and I think Morgan enjoyed it, but I'm not entirely sure. On our way home, my car was like, I refuse to accelerate if you have your headlights on. So while at first I viewed this as an unreasonable behavior because, the Phoenix should obey me, I scolded it, of course, as a result. Once I got home and Morgan left, I discovered it was simply cranky because its battery terminals were super corroded, and thus it wasn't getting its daily dose of electric goodness that every growing car needs. Hence, I eventually cleaned those terminals, and the foul mood of my car ended, which I'm very grateful for because you not understand how done I am fixing that car. I don't want to fix it anymore. Then, that Wednesday, a very, very glorious thing happened. I went to Magic Club, and this guy, also named Alex, ironically, actually the leader before me was also named Alex, too. I guess Alex is just born to rule over the nerds. What can I say? Anyway, a guy named Alex agreed to become club president, which is actually fantastic. And funny enough, actually, he just passed off the presidency to another guy. So it's just like hot potato with who has to be Magic Club president. Anyway, so without further ado, I handed the title off to him. And honestly, it was just a title. Like, some of the guys at the club didn't even know I was president. That shows you how much respect I got. And I haven't been to Magic Club since then. See, prior to my resignation, I would come to play Magic at Magic Club, basically because I was feeling obligated as the president. You can't not attend the club you're the president of, right? Even though I don't really enjoy playing with people there. I mean, sure, I enjoy the game. Like, Magic is a good game. But a game is only as good as the people you play it with, and I'm pretty sure I've ranted about this before, so I'm not going to repeat that. But yeah, instead, I've been able to spend the entirety of each Wednesday with Neo, which I've enjoyed far more, and am far more happy with that development as a whole. So, as one might expect, given the sentence I just uttered. Thank you. I then spent the rest of the day with Neo, after which I slept. Thursday, I cleaned up the EMEC because if I didn't, I would fail the class, which is not something I'm particularly fond of doing, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to get it done because I'm not particularly fond of failing. Thus, I cleaned. Once I got home, I did small chore stuff, and then I had work and classes and got introduced to the idea to Product Lab, which is basically a space with 30 3D printers, all of which use free PLA filament for like $20 of a membership, which is a fantastic deal. So basically, it's just like endless printing. I then fixed my car, cleaned its battery terminals as previously described, and then once I got home, I finished nothing and took a bath while watching some anime before going to Joe's house and deck building and then playing Magic with Sam while the rest of ye old folks watched some insignificant movie. Sam was pretty fun to 1v1, I must say. And then once that elapsed, I slept. Saturday, out of my deep affection for the Miller Mountaineering Club, which supersedes my deep affection for sleep at certain times. Water. I arose at 6:45 a.m. to go on a hike. However, honestly, the hike was pretty lame. It was Chris, Molly, me, and then 2 other girls, one of which is Cable's girlfriend, though Cable wasn't there, which is pretty ironic. Although I guess it's fiance. She's actually getting married in like 17 days with him, so I can't actually go because I'll be in New Zealand. But anyway, it had been like a year or so since my last hike with him, so I try not to fall back into my old rut of interaction, namely Alex 1.0ing. But then again, I was kind of hyped up by Molly for my question weaving skills, and so there was some Alex 1.0ing in there where it's just like, it was a balance. Basically, I'm saying I try to strike a balance between my Alex 2.0 and the Alex 1.0 they all knew. And thus, when some awkward silences arose, I decided to step in and do my thing. And it's not like I did it badly. In fact, at one point in the trip, they actually complimented my question weaving and said it was very skillful, which I appreciate. But as I was talking to Cable's girlfriend, it was like the life just got sucked out of me. It could be the fact that, since she's radically charismatic in her leanings, well, actually, let me just full stop there. It could be the fact that she was radically charismatic in her leanings. And as many of you know, I have a particularly low tolerance for the charismatic approach to life and theology. There's a whole anthology I can give about this, but, regardless, charismatic rubbed me the wrong way. But assuming it wasn't just that she was charismatic, because I can deal with charismatics, it was likely because when I was asking her questions and trying to probe her soul, she just regurgitated her testimony. See, that's the thing charismatics do quite a lot, is they share their testimony, and because she's quite charismatic, she has shared her testimony, I guarantee, at least 100 times. Thus, she was in a unique situation because, unlike most people who I, you know, have talked to and who haven't thought, like, how to narrate their life through, not only has she done so, but she's basically been forced to by her denomination. So when I asked, what's your life story, it was as if I hit the, play recording button on her brain, and she proceeded to give me the same story she'd given thousands of others so many times before, aka her testimony. And it felt like I gave her a piece of nice handcrafted card. Not a piece. I gave her a nice handcrafted card being like, I'd like to get to know you better. And she returned, one of those store-bought cards with a fixed message and sign her name at the bottom. All while acting as if she, expertly fulfilled my request. And she's like, yes, I want to get to know you better too. But I'm like, you didn't say anything original. I could have been a wall, and it would have been as informative. Like, you would have said the exact same thing if I was a wall. In fact, you probably repeated this to yourself in the mirror. So, like, you literally probably said the exact same thing to a wall. Honestly, I find it extremely off-putting. I can understand if you don't want to be vulnerable with a complete stranger you met just today. Like, heck, I'm not even saying that's a bad idea. Like, you should probably do that. Hold some stuff in. But then, don't go and give me your memorized speech about your past that clearly does not emotionally impact you in any way whatsoever. And then be like, I'm good! Anyway. And also, it wasn't even, like, thought through, too. Like, I'm the kind of guy that can appreciate a heartless rendition of your past, given you've actually, like, scrutinized it and you really understand what's going on there. If you've actually done the introspection, you're like, yeah, this doesn't emotionally get me anymore because I've done it so many times, I did it well, and I'll be like, okay, I can appreciate that. Anyway, it's like the equivalent of a funny store-bought card, or something like with a really good inspiring quote. Like, sure, it doesn't have a personal touch or any feeling, but at least it's actually well done. But her testimony wasn't that. She, didn't really do introspection. She didn't actually understand why she acted the way she did, or, what aspects of past wounds still affect her, or what characteristics are core to her being. None of that. And, I tried to explore those areas and actually make her think, and she was like, yeah, I don't know. And then would just brush off the, questions that were, beyond her memorized bit. And give some super surface level answer before going back to the recording. It was immensely vexing. Hence, when in turn I was asked to share, because, mostly that's how this goes. You ask them a question, and they're like, oh, well, now I can just ask you the same question back, which is kind of fair, I felt a tangible repulsion to the notion because I was like, you shared nothing with me. You told me nothing. Thus, it was probably the most resistant I've been to being remotely vulnerable to a person that I can remember being in the last, 3 years. Hence, I try to get out of it, but, it's tough with circumstances being as they are, because I'm kind of trapped on a hike with people, and there's social expectation. Thus, I gave an extremely truncated and soulless rendition of my past, just to, return in kind, and then moved on as fast as possible. And even then, it was still quite unpleasant. Now, that's not to say nothing good came out of the hike. Chris got stopped by 3 police cars for illegally holding an antler, and got a warning point on his permanent record, so that was good. But that testimony regurgitation experience just soured the rest of the hike for me. Plus, also, the other new girl was a freshman that Cable's girlfriend didn't really know, but was trying to, be friendly with, kind of like a disciple-y thing. Which is cool, don't get me wrong, I appreciate people trying to bring people in the group. But it was obvious she was, significantly emotionally hurting, and so when I tried to bring the conversation around to help, initiate some healing in those areas, everyone just joined in as if they knew what they were doing. And it may be, just my hubris talking, but I think I developed a skill set for helping hurting people. If I try, and it does depend when I'm trying, right, then I have actually got something of a skill set in this regard. It's kind of like surgery. You've got to do it just right, or else, the wound just get worse. And so I'm not going to say, I'm a master at it, but I am convinced there's a skill set to be had, and while I appreciate the good intent of others, they did not exercise that skill set. So yeah, it was just vexing. The girl is genuinely hurting and needs help, and you were all just making things worse. So yeah, that also made the trip rough, because I was like, no, please, no, Thus, I hit the end of my emotional battery around the last bit of the hike, and thus the rest of the conversation was mostly just small talk to fill awkward silences. Questions like, would you rather be tasked with building a functional plane or be killed if you didn't complete it in 5 years, or fight an angry gorilla and then, fight to the death? Which, of course, is an absolutely meaningless question, but nevertheless, a valiant attempt by Molly to fill the void, and thus I appreciate it. As stupid as it was. And yeah, we drove back down after getting some chai tea, and I was very happy once we parted ways. Once I got home, I worked through the rest of Magic Save Reason's video on Bayes' theorem, which is actually revolutionary, by the way. If you haven't watched it, it's mandatory you do so, because it is extremely likely you're thinking of probability wrong. Here's an example he gave just at the start, just to drive home the point to you don't know anything about probability, right? A woman is a member of a demographic where the odds of having cancer are 1%. She then goes and gets tested with a machine that has an accuracy in its diagnosis of cancer at 90%. The test returns positive. What are the odds she has cancer? Think about it. I'm going to repeat it because I think you should actually think about it. A woman is a member of a demographic where the odds of having cancer are 1%. She then goes and gets tested with a machine that is accurate in its diagnosis of cancer 90% of the time. The test returns positive. What are the odds she actually has cancer? Answer, 8%. Not 20%, not 90%, 8%. And I know what you're thinking, right? The test came back positive, and there's a 90% chance that it's accurate, so the answer should be 90%. And I know, I thought that too. But that's actually so wrong. And to understand why, you need to watch Majesty Reason's video on Bayesian. And it actually flipped how I think of probability on its head for me. Anyway, watched that video, took a bath, and watched some anime, because my brain died. While I watched that video, it was like a 4-hour video, by the way, I weaved chainmail the whole time, and I actually only finished like 6 inches of the weave. That process is so time-consuming. I mean, that's in part because I take time to make sure every single ring is, like, super solid, because it only takes, one rogue link to make the whole thing unravel. But still, like, actually such a slow process. That said, I did finally finish one side of the chainmail shirt, and it's now time for the other side. After that, I then called with Liam, after which I called Sydney, after which I watched some more anime, and after that, I talked to Grace, and I went to bed. The next day I went to church, taught magic to someone, I can't actually remember who, but I think it was a female. I then left lunch activities early and arrived at Neo and City's house because our employer had arrived. See, somehow, Neo stumbled across this poster in the theater building asking for a nerd to cosplay our daughter's wedding, which happened to be a nerd wedding. And let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up. Basically, her daughter decided to embrace her nerddom and the nerddom of her many friends and hold an extravagant nerd wedding. There were to be 12 tables, each with a different nerd theme, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, etc. And then, when the dancing begun, she would have 4 cosplayers from those various nerd categories go and mingle with her guests for an hour. Now, see, she was willing to pay each cosplayer $300 for that hour of their service, which I surmise is what made Sydney so enthusiastic for the idea. But nevertheless, it was going to be a very nerdy wedding, and Sydney figured our group of 4, herself, John, Neo, and I, were a perfect match. And I'm not saying we weren't, but Neo and I were definitely more hesitant originally. However, once I discovered there was going to be a D&D table and I could play my favorite Dragonborn wizard, Thales, then my resistance levels dropped to negligible levels, and Neo's remains constant. But I mean, come on, I couldn't say no after figuring out I could play Thales. I actually love that character. Hence, have you ever... I don't think I've ever displayed Thales. I'm a little bit tempted to narrate the rest in Thales mode. Maybe I could just, narrate the next paragraph in Thales. I'm gonna do it. Hence, the employer lady arrived at Neo and Sydney's house to talk things over, and give an aforementioned permitted nerve factions, as well as other details. Thus, I arrived early. So, essentially, we all agreed that, though Neo quite reluctantly agreed to do so, to cosplay the wedding would be quite a good idea. Hence, unfortunately, and I'm going to say this just now because it's relevant, we didn't end up actually doing the gig, because apparently the woman's daughter reneged on her desire for attendance, and hence we were subsequently fired from our hirement. Though, of course, I will say, after I dropped my $100 on my wizard costume, I was a bit put out by this lack of return on investment that I expected. However, we decided we were going to do a Renaissance fair, just, to get some of our otherwise wasted money used. So yes, we have been hired as a wizard, and then we were fired as a wizard, and life is hard, and then you get fired from wizardom. So yeah, that's not actually perfectly Thales, because, I was impromptu doing it, but that's a taste for Thales. Anyway, of course, we didn't know we would get fired, so we all conspired, see what I did right there, concerning the upcoming matrimonial event, which I still want to go to. Just saying, even if I'm not a wizard, it would be very cool to attend a nerd wedding. The ratio of nerd to wedding is clearly 3-1. So, the sweet light of nerd would no doubt diminish the bitter taste of wedding that accompanies it. I need a nerd wedding in my life right now. I should probably beseech Joe and Karina. Joe, you're up, my dude. Make my dreams come true. Bring about a nerd wedding for me. Karina, you should do it too. What's the odds? 7? Less than 7? At least 1. Anyway, after the wedding lady left, we all played D&D as per usual, and unlike as per usual, at the end of that, Neo took Sydney to the ER because she was experiencing a burning sensation on the left side of her body. Although we did not know this at the time, it turns out Sydney actually has MS, which was, that was the first real telltale sign. So yeah, that's been definitely a yike. At this point, she's a lot better, and also in a lot less pain, but I'm just going to be honest, it's been a pretty rough process. Thank God she has insurance for being a teacher, though, because, as I write this, the running total for the tests and treatments is over $50,000. Like, yeah. And somehow they haven't paid a cent of that. It's absolutely a godsend. So yeah, I mean, if she, had to get diagnosed, this was definitely the right time. But then again, there's no real right time to get diagnosed with MS. So yeah, there's a few more occasions where Sydney leaves a picture for medical reasons, and I'm probably not gonna explain them in detail every time, but that's fine. A lot went down with the whole MS diagnosis and treatment process. I don't remember all the details, but just overall, it's been rough. And if you want to send her some prayers some way, if you want to send some prayers her way, I'm pretty sure she would appreciate it. So yeah, just honestly, pretty sketchy scenario. After Sydney was taken to the hospital, John and I, since there was nothing we could really do for her, decided to hang out. We grabbed some food and met up at his place and played Magic and caught up, and it was really good. John knows this guy who's like a classic cowboy, shoot the government while we smoke cigars kind of guy, and it sounds like seeing him again was totally a blast for John. The cowboy man's family is really similar to Moon's family, if you remember him from the Virtue Retreat. And he was also super welcoming from the sound of it, so I think it's kind of what instilled in John a kind of a goalpost for what he wants his family and community to be like. So that was really cool. Anyway, it was just really good catching with John and hearing about the stuff that was happening in his life, and I just, enjoyed that time. Also, I got to beat him with my ultimate magic deck, so that was fun too. Then, finally, once I wrapped up that, I got caught up with some Magic Savers and stuff and proceeded to go to bed. The next day was a snow day, which normally would have been great, but seeing as I didn't know it was a snow day until I woke up at my usual time, because I didn't really get to sleep in, and then, the fact that I literally did homework until 5:30, no, actually, I did 5 hours and 30 minutes doing homework with an hour or so break, so more like 4.5 hours doing homework. It was kind of just, worse than the usual school day, because I didn't get to sleep in and I just did homework all the time. Thus, I didn't really enjoy the snow day almost at all. However, I did get to play some Magic with Joe, and I also got to catch up with him. So I guess the snow day did it for me, some extra hours that turned out to be significant, so I should be pretty grateful nonetheless. After Joe and I talked and drove around for quite some time, I then joined my family and hang out with Noah and Melissa, and I swear, every time I see them, I'm shocked by how odd they are. Not odd in a bad way, but odd in an interesting way. I honestly don't know how I always expect them to be normal people, when I'm always reminded every time I see them, they are very much not that. Anyway, I mostly listened to work on chainmail while the conversation occurred, but at one point, the topic came up of my chainmailing itself, and so I ended up showing Noah the nunchucks I had made, if you remember those. And it turns out Noah really likes nunchucks, and he played with them for the entire rest of the night, after I brought them out, that is. And so at the end of it all, I was like, Noah, why don't you just keep them? Because, all they're doing is hanging up in the nails on my dungeon, they're not even really being displayed. And after a bit persuading, he was like, yeah, I'll take them. And there is no one I could have possibly given those nunchucks to that would enjoy them more than Noah. And this is a step out of the timeline, but I was recently at his house, and the nunchucks I made were literally on his bedside table. And it wasn't along with 7 other things. It was his phone, a glass of water, and my nunchucks. And thus, I was pretty happy. It was also 2 months after I gave it to him, too. So yeah, that was pretty great. Also, they were mega beat up. But despite heavy use, they still hadn't broken, so I call it a win. Noah adopted nunchucks I made, and that's that. And then, they left. Noah and Melissa left. And once they had gone, I basically finished up the anime I was watching before into bed. The next day, the snow had evaporated because that's how Colorado be, and it was back to the grind. I did classes in the morning, stopped at home for a food break, went back to class where Anthony basically just did all our difficult homework for us, which I was very, happy of, though I didn't learn anything. Did my CAD lab work, worked on that some more. And then I think I did some stuff with my Magic the Gathering Wizard deck, but I honestly can't remember. And then, as per Tuesday night activities, I watched some Bofuri with the group, and there's a reason is my most watched anime. It's beautiful. Played some Magic, did some Pokemon Go, and then I went home and went to sleep. Wednesday morning began me doing stuff in the EMEC. I then bought some costume stuff for the Wizard gig that never occurred. And then after that, had some food and anime, and did work, and went to classes, and then went on a run. And then went over to Neo's for Wednesday night stuff, but it was rough over there because Sydney basically just figured out she had MS, and thus the evening was a pretty tense one. Also, wait, let me take a drink before I do this. Also, Sydney was actively cutting my hair as she was telling us about her diagnosis. And while I do feel bad that all I could think about was a haphazard snipping at my hair during a very emotional moment in her life, I'll be honest, that was on the forefront of my mind. Don't get me wrong, I was listening. But for some reason, Sydney insisted on cutting my hair at that exact moment. And though I suspected this would be a poor decision, I agreed in order to give her, a semblance of normalcy. But then, of course, she ended up crying as she was cutting my hair, which, is totally understandable given the circumstances, but she just kept cutting my hair as she was breaking down into tears. So, first of all, it was an awkward position to be in, because, she's crying behind me, and, I can't see her, and then she has scissors right in my head. And second, the more emotional she got, as I hope you can understand, the more concerned I became about what she was doing to my hair. So yeah, I feel bad, but that's how it was, okay? It was a hard time for all of us. Anyway, after the haircutting, she decided she wants to watch this musical called Jesus Something, and I hated it so much I blocked even Sam from my memory, and it was probably one of the worst things I've watched ever. Like, it was supposed to be a show where Jesus comes to modern day, but its theology was super screwed up. Like, Jesus gets seduced, sleeps around, Jesus is the hero, and Jesus deluded and believing he's God. It was horrible. A horrible, heretical rendition of Jesus that was actually just tangibly repulsive. On top of that musical, which I generally did not enjoy at all, there were also sketchy outfits, so, like, just, add insult to injury. Anyway, it was probably one of the worst things, but I couldn't say no because, about 30 minutes before, she'd been like, hey, I have MS. So I'm kind of obligated to do whatever she tells me at this point in time. Thus, I stayed for like an hour before I actually just had to leave. Like, I could not finish the movie. I was like, I'm going. And, yep, I just didn't care about those consequences at that point in time because I hated that movie so much. Honestly, it was a unique experience of having such a strong repulsion to a movie, but I genuinely just could not watch it anymore. So yeah, that was horrible. I went home, had my dad trim my hair, which turned out Sydney did not do a very bad job, so thank you, Sydney. Also, sorry I was concerned with my hair. I then took a shower to reset, because, removing the hair was good, and I also was, trying to recalibrate myself to go back. And then I got back just as the movie ended. And then for the rest of the day, Neo and I just played Magic, and that was a good way to end the otherwise pretty sucky day. The next day, basically, I did all the things that was at schoolwork, and I actually did wake up at 9 in the morning and did school things till 9:30 at night. So I took 2 breaks for 2 meals, and that was it. It was just so much work. But hey, I got a lot done. So, that was good. Finally, when I finished all my work, I then sorted instrumental songs for a bit before going to bed. The day thereafter, I went to the EMEC for my Haas exam, and now by all rights, there was no way I was prepared for that exam. But it just so happened the girl I suspect to have a crush on me, Leanne, was also there, and so while I was waiting, she offered to prepare me for the exam, since she had already taken it. And thanks to her very thorough training, I was actually able to do really well on the exam I would have otherwise probably failed. And now I have a Haas certification, aka a piece of paper that says, this guy can press buttons in the particular order that you ask, depending on the nature of the task. So yeah, you wish you were button certified, just like I am. I then went home, watched some anime. I worked, did classes, knurled my second screwdriver, only discovered I'd actually knurled my first screwdriver correctly. So yeah, I'm good at my job. And then I made my plastic injection screwdriver, which wasn't difficult, because it's plastic injection. And then I went home and did homework, or something, apparently insignificant, enough for me to warrant, forgetting to record it in my notes today. And yeah, good job. The next morning was a Saturday morning, but alas, there was no sleeping to be had as I had previously arranged to sew with Karina and Johanna. Thus, I arose at the designated time, met up with them, and proceeded to sew from 10 to 4 in the afternoon. So 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. And honestly, the sewing was a lot easier than I thought it would be. Not easier in the sense that it was, I was good at it, but easier in the sense that it wasn't complicated. And upon writing that out, I realized the word I was looking for was in fact simpler. But of course, to admit that I had chosen the wrong word would make me seem dumb. So instead I will maintain the word I meant to say really was easier, and it contains a unique nuance that the word simple clearly lacks. As to what that particular nuance might be, I do not bother to extrapolate upon it because your plebeian brain would find it esoteric and it would be quite the waste of my time. So yes, sewing was good. I did it badly, but I improved as the day went on. I decided diagonal zippers are in fact cool, and large single pocketed sweaters are not. So yeah, I would say I made a sweatshirt with the aforementioned qualities, but it would be far more accurate to say Karina and I made a sweatshirt with the aforementioned qualities, and hence why she doesn't want to sew again, because it kind of ended up she was just babysitting Johanna and I. Still, the finished product wasn't that bad. I also played some Magic 1v1s with Sam, and honestly lost way more times than I like to admit. So I won't! I got home, ate food, watched some anime, played what had been deemed Speed Seek, the CSU game where I'm on Blaze trying to find and catch people, and did with most people from Ratchet Christie, which they enjoyed it, safely Liam, because he doesn't like moving. Once that was done, I watched some anime with Grace, called Liam, and it was pretty good. And then we did an anime quiz, but I'm not entirely sure if that's actually correct. And then I ended the day. Sunday, I went to church as per usual, after which we played Magic as per usual. And once Magic ceased, I went to Neo and Sydney's for a typical game of D&D as per usual. And I had some really good epic moments with really low odds of occurring, as not per usual. So that was great. I had this moment where a speeder was crashing, because we're in Star Wars, right? So a speeder was crashing, and I backflipped off a tree and caught it. It was a stupidly hard check to make, and I actually made it. So in all of reality, it was a dumb decision because I was almost guaranteed to fail. But I succeeded. It was cool. I then stuck around, and we now including Alan, all talked about what we wanted B-Stud to be in the future. And we came to some conclusions. I don't remember what they were particularly, but Alan has them written down somewhere, so we don't need to worry about remembering them. Then, after that talk, Braden and Maddie came over and we all played Emperor, a version of Magic the Gathering for Commander, and it was pretty fun. I almost killed Braden, but then he just summoned 50-something flyers, and very much leveled my team, so that was sad. The next day was Monday, so the cycle began once again. I started off my day with some math, tutoring, and study, and then did work and homework and classes and more work, and then more homework before going to Ratio and finally doing no homework during Ratio. Instead, I played old Flash games, while the Catholic priest was basically just being pastoral. It was honestly pretty bad because he was, being pastoral in a Catholic way to a very Protestant audience, and thus was rhetorically awful. And also partially because I knew more about his faith than he did, at least the technicalities. So, it was just rough. Plus, one of our members, a girl named Melissa, just really sunk her claws into him in a pretty unshareable manner. It was hard to watch. It was just not kind. And her points weren't even good. So yeah, anyway. After the pastoral talk, I wanted to talk with Alan about important things, but he denied my request on the grounds of lack of brain power, so instead I just caught up with him what was going on in his life, and that was good. Then once I got home, I watched some anime before going to sleep. The next day, during class, I discovered my midterm for the Mech 200A had been pushed back in its due date about a week. And that was a big yay because that was going to be so much work. I then did my usual Tuesday class routine before going over to Joe's, eating food, progressing our Bofuri watch, and then playing some Magic with Benj, Caleb, and... playing some Magic as Ben, Caleb, and Benj watched the Monty Python movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And then we played a bit more Magic once I finished. And then, of course, I went to bed because it was late. Wednesday, I did work on my screwdriver, which, I never actually showed you guys pictures of my screwdriver or my clock, so I'm going to do that, which, is an audio version. It's completely pointless to narrate because you can't see. But if you go to the email, you could see the project took like 50 hours of my life. And I understand they're unassuming, but those pieces of metal are very precisely shaped. After working on the screwdrivers, I then did my CAD homework until the computer was just like, no. It was weird because I would log in and they would just like immediately log me back out. I don't want to talk about how many times the cycle of logging in and logging back out had to occur before I realized it wasn't going to work. So I won't. I then met up with Neo for our usual Wednesday night stuff, and we talked. Well, we did talk, and we walked. So we walked and talked. And we gathered the traditional King Super supplies. I need a drink. We then started a new anime, which, apparently traumatized Sydney. So, sorry about that, Sydney. And then after that, me and Neo started this tabletop version of Magic, which never got past the prototyping stages, which is in large part due to my lack of enthusiasm, since honestly the whole semester I felt like a lot more drained than earlier. Because, the semester before I was thriving, and this one was definitely more like I was surviving. Thus, I haven't really had the energy or the will to put into inventive stuff. Regardless, we did give it a shot then. The next day I took my ECE Preemie, which is like the test before the test, but it still counts as the actual test unless you do it really badly and then you can redo it. And I got a perfect score, so that was great. I then came home, watched some anime, but as I ate, and then went to my lab section since it was Thursday. And while I was there, I had got some stuff done. Well, I finished really early, and I actually spent a lot of my time networking, if I remember correctly. I'm getting to know my classmates. See, I'd previously underestimated how much just even being rough acquaintances with your classmates can benefit you, but after the encounter with Leanne, where she basically saved my butt for the HOS exam, it really opened my eyes to the value of knowing people. Thus, I put some effort in and would say I did very well. The Alex 2.0 evolution was quite a productive one, as now I am able to toggle my bubbly levels to just the right specifications for my nerd needs. And yeah, I can feel the power. Oh, I can feel it. After networking, took my second DiffyQ exam, and I walked out thinking I aced it, which of course means I got a 67. So that was no less disappointing than every other time I walked out of an exam confident and did really badly. So, yep. Once I got home, I went and did a YouTube spree where I watched YouTube videos on all the cool free softwares you should have on your computer. And now I have a lot of cool free softwares on my computer. And then I also managed to do a bit of a work on trying to get this old LEGO Universe game to work. And I actually did succeed. It took a little bit of finagling, but I got the game to work. See, back when I was 11, LEGO released what was at the time a really high quality game called LEGO Universe, and I remember really loving it as a kid. However, not too long after its release, it got shut down for reasons I still don't know. And thus, of course, my childhood self was quite sad. Hence, it just so happened that I bumped into a guy at church that was one of the developers of the game, and he also had access to a Discord server where the copy of the game was actually stored. So I was really stoked. And so while it took a bit of work, I was actually getting it to run on my computer, and that was pretty cool. To be fair, my childhood memory of the game was definitely enlarged, or, games just gotten way better. But it was still held up pretty well, to be honest. And while, the techie stuff all took quite a bit of time, I did get it done. And I, spent the rest of my time that day playing that game. And it was a good way to spend the day. The next morning, I discovered the grade I received for my previous DiffyQ exam, and thus I was also very sad. Plus, I found out that I was not permitted to use the EMEC for hobby projects, and that was also sad. However, I did schedule my training with the Ideative Products Lab, aka the 3D printing lab, so at least something good happened. I then did CAD homework in the computer lab, went to work, and then classes were taking it easy at home, since I had some time to kill. And then I did some LEGO Universal while taking it easy, and listened to Pipes with Aquinas. I also took a break to watch some anime food. Then, per my spontaneous request I had issued but hours before, the Myers clan plus Noah arrived at my house for a game of Speed Seek. However, it did not go great because the girls were wimps and wouldn't go around CSU alone. They're like, oh no, we're gonna die. And then, okay, to be fair, there might be some justification. I don't really know how to be a girl, etc. All the qualifications necessary for Alex 2.0 in place there. They're inserted right there. Okay. Moving on. And then Benj and Ben just played Pokemon Go the whole time, so it wasn't like Speed Seek. Plus, they sent super obscure pictures. Also, Seth joined my team, but he unfortunately was not able to keep up, so the game was a bit of a dud overall. But should we do it again, which I hope we will know what to improve upon. Thus, I'm still glad it happened. And I think we could have some really good games in the future. Okay. We weren't able to play very long because the young ones had to go home early, and thus, after they left, I decided to get to work on editing an AMV together using the free software that, from my perspective, is slightly better than Premiere Pro. Now, it's probably not actually better than Premiere Pro, but it explains itself. Oh, I'm going to say that, right. The main reason I say that is because it's super intuitively labeled and easy to find, so I didn't have to look up a tutorial for, like, every function, like I did with Premiere. So, yeah, that was pretty fun, honestly. I got the hang of that pretty fast. The next morning was Saturday, and it was the first morning in literal months where I didn't just, do stuff. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, ever since the start of the semester, every single Saturday, or just day, has been full of having something to do. But for the first time in, like, all that time, there was 8 hours of unscheduled time, which was pretty odd. And the problem with gaps with that is that, like, while you might want to do something really productive, it's really hard to start anything meaningful because it's just 8 hours. So, it rides in that border of, like, a nice long time and too long of a time. So, anyway. That morning I decided to play Universal, listening to the Souls Control debate between Trent Horn, and Gavin Orland. And maybe it's just I've been indoctrinated by the Catholics, but Gavin's points seemed pretty bad, to be honest. And I felt the whole debate was just very uninformative. I then realized that the note I'd made to myself about the advising meeting, that wasn't an advising meeting, was actually telling me to register for classes instead. So that happened, and I was like, oh, I need to register for classes this time. When I thought it was going to be my advisor telling me what class I need to register for this time. So I was basically like, well, gotta wing it. So I just found a chart on CSU's website and took the general degree progression of Mechis and was like, these are the classes I'm taking. So that was definitely stressful. But looking back, I actually almost got it right. I registered for all but one class, the same as what my advisor actually planned for me. So that was pretty good. After the registration debacle, I then joined my family for a trip to Essence, which was really nice. We had this really good lemon bread at the Ink and Brew, and man, that stuff was good. Other than that, we kind of just walked around with no real place to go. We talked and ate some good pizza, and then overall had just a relaxing experience. And yeah, that was nice. Once I got home, I decided to go rollerblading down Springfield Trail, and it was just perfect weather. Like, super relaxing and therapeutic. Also because I had my instrumental music on, so that was just great. Then Dad came pick me up once I reached the end, so I didn't even have to blade on the way back, which was fantastic. I was grateful for the whole thing. Then once I got home, I watched some AMVs before going to bed, and that was the day. I'm going to briefly pause because my voice is becoming tired. And I know I'm only like a little bit through. It's like an hour. I'm not even close to halfway through, guys. So, it probably won't be noticeable for you as a pause because I'll hit the pause button and it'll play. But I'm going to get a drink because my water's almost out. Bye. Well, not really bye. Hi. Bye. Okay, bye. And then later, hi. Alright. I'm back. This is going to be so long. But I feel refreshed. More water is good. Let's see. Oh, yep. Dad picked me up, which is great. And then I got home. I watched some AMVs, and I went to bed. That was good. I went to the church the next morning, and I was going to do magic, but Johanna pleaded with us, on account of some reason I forgot, not to play magic, and instead, just all talk around the table, as we once used to. So, we did that. I then went to D&D. At Neil's, which was normal, and I ate food, and then John, Alan, Neil, Sydney, and I all did a YouTube compilation movie night, which instead of watching a movie, we all chose like 20 minutes of YouTube videos and shuffled them together and watched that, which overall was actually a really good experience. I recommend doing that. However, I will say John's choices were weird, like bordering on disturbing. But apart from those, and some of the videos from Neil's childhood, there were things said in those I did not need to hear. Anyway, sorry, I was just saying, apart from those, it was a pretty enjoyable experience. The next morning I began by going on a much-needed run. It's dumb how much slower I get after not running for like a month. And then I trained the idea to Product Lab, so now I have access to printers, which I could have gotten access for them over the summer as well, but then that would have required me to put in like 20 printing reservations, which effectively would have meant I had to print every single day of the week until school ended. And I realized real quick that I just couldn't swing that. So as it stands, I'll have to wait until next semester to get access to those again. But still, the Idea to Product Lab is a really cool resource. So many PLA printers and limited free PLA. Like, that's a lot of potential. After that, I found out my CAD class grade dropped by 6% because I hadn't realized there was a homework assignment that existed, and thus I got a 0, and it felt pretty vexing, and unjust to be like, well, you forgot something, 0. Therefore, your entire grade dropped 6%. Like, gosh, I stopped. When I was at For Range, people would be like, oh, I understand, you forgot. But here they're just like, no exceptions. I'm like, okay. Anyway, I then worked on the Mech 200A midterm, which was just the beginning of a very long and grueling assignment. When I came into work, I discovered that it was Student Employee Appreciation Day, so that was a little fun. And they made a balloon arch and set up decorations, that was cool. And we had a bit of Oreos and stuff. And also sugary items that existed to only tempt me. But there were also Lamar's donuts, and those were super tempting. Like, I almost caved. Thus, it turns out that sweets are not actually a gift, at least to me. But what they say, they say, one man's donut is another man's 10 fish from hell. That's just how it goes. However, somewhat ironically, as a reward for my resistance, I then bought myself Wendy's. And after eating said Wendy's, I then did CAD work for 3 hours, as Alan gave his Protestant presentation on talking things. And I finally finished, like an hour after the talk ended. All that CAD work was part of the Mech 200A project, by the way. And since, of course, my brain was good and dead at that point, I then gave Liam a very brief talk on the metaphysics of things, and then once I got home, I collapsed and watched some anime until it was time to sleep. That Tuesday was entirely standard, with the exceptions being I had to do data entry at work, which was mind-numbingly boring, instead of, not working, which was much better. And then I also had to try and 3D print something on the printers, which unfortunately failed because my file wasn't the right type. And then I went over to Joe's, and with Noah and I, and Joe and I, and Joe and Noah and I, those 3 people, including myself and I, all went on a walk because the weather was lovely. And Joe talked about the details of the pre-release, so that was an okay time. Then once I got back, Ben and Caleb joined Joe, Karina... Then once I got back, Ben and Caleb joined Joe, Karina, Ben, Noah, and me for some volleyball over at CSU. We also picked up a random guy whose name I forgot. But overall, it was a good time. It turns out that Noah's toes have a power previously unknown to mankind, though, and their true strength was finally released. However, apparently Ben was on the dark side of this strongly protested power, as the outflow of Noah's toes was deeply uncomfortable to him. Other than that incident, though, I think we had a good time. But Ben, actually got kind of upset. And, I mean, to be fair, Noah is weird. Everyone was staring at us, so I understand if you're socially, aware, then that could bug you. But I was having a good time. The sand did really hurt your feet, though. That was also unpleasant. Once we got back, we watched a bit of Furry, and we went our separate ways and slept. I slept in the next morning, but otherwise it was a typical Wednesday. I did, however, decide to just not do some math homework because I didn't want to. I instead did other homework until 6:15 in the rest of the day. So it was the entire day. After that, I spontaneously hung out with Ben and Grace after 6:15. And at that time, Ben was doing a gig for the newest Toyota car, and thus he had this car on loan. And while it was basically just your standard commuter's car, it was a very new standard commuter's car, and thereby not your standard commuter car by our standards. And because, you go faster than every car we'd driven, even though it was not like a sports car or anything. And that's what was really cool to us. So he drove us around, and we got drinks from Beaver's Market, and it was, just good. We went over to the old town library and just chilled in the playground and talked. However, unfortunately, Ben made Grace mad, so that kind of made it tense near the end. Regardless, it was good, though, and I think it's important to have time when there's nothing scheduled. You just do what, you want to do with people that matter to you. Anyway, after that, we got home, and Neo was free, so I went to walk with him, and I talked with him, and that was nice. And then once we got back, I went to bed. The next day, I woke up super early because I thought I had to, but I didn't. I was just wrong. I didn't have to wake up that early. I did a lot of work on a paper for something. I superheated some metal with an acetylene torch, and then smacked it in the shape of a screwdriver tip with a job forge. That was fun. Once I got home, I watched some anime with fam that did work on aforementioned paper, and then helped Grace before discovering some AI stuff. The day thereafter was super chill, which was big bueno. I got to take a bath that morning, which was very nice, and before my whole day started, so yeah. During that day, I tried to get my boss for the APCRL, so my tertiary boss, to invest in some AI software to automate the data entry process I had been trained in previously because it was super mind-numbing. But she said no! Not because it wouldn't work, but because it was actually cheaper to just have us students do it, as she, was going to employ us either way. So regardless, if we do data entry, if we're going to, do something at the desk, we wait. And so why pay, extra when she can just have us do data entry instead of homework? And I mean, granted, her logic is sound, but I'm personally saying I would much rather do homework and get paid to do that than pay to do data entry. Thus, my persuasion check did not meet the DC, and so life went on. After the rest of the typical Tuesday activities, I went to Joe's house where we played some Magic games before going to the AI. Oh wait, the All Will Be One pre-release, and yep, we all just did garbage. Noah was the only one, I think, out of the 9 of us that did any good. Still, it was cool to have such a large group. I think in the end we had Braden, John, Sydney, Neo, Noah, Sam, Benj, and myself. I think that's everyone. However, the loss was especially crushing for Joe because he put in a ton of work into the set and basically did a ton of research only to play his worst pre-release yet. The other thing was that Griffin, the game shop where we go to, systems were down, so they had to manually enter all the scores and stuff, and so the event took like way longer than usual. And then we were there until 3 in the morning, when usually we're only there until 1 in the morning. It's like 2 hours more long, and it was, yeah, that kind of sucked. Saturday we had a family thing planned to be done, so we did that with the Wades. And I slept until like 30 minutes before we had to leave, so it was around noon. And it was really peaceful driving out there. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I have a unique love of sitting in the backseat of cars for long rides. I think I might love it because nothing's expected of me, even by myself, and thus I can just do anything. Like, I could unproductively stare out the window for hours and not feel bad. Or else, you know, because the thing is, like, if I try and, like, read or something, I'll get car sick. That's why it's usable for me. Thus, it's a time where I'm both internally and externally permitted to do nothing whatsoever. And I mean, I've been really busy with school and all as of late, so external permission is a bigger deal these days. But I think what makes a car really unique is that it's my internal permission. Basically, I have an omnipresent, nagging desire to do meaningful things with my life. And so, if it's ever the case I'm not doing meaningful things, even if no one else expects me to do anything like that, I grow generally uneasy. Like, it's not to say I don't ever waste my time, I definitely do. But whenever I do waste my time, there's always this nagging sensation that I should do something better. And oddly enough, that sensation compounds the longer it goes unfulfilled. Thus, almost always, when enough time passes, it grows so annoying and motivates me to actually do something productive. Anyway, I need to blow my nose. Sorry, I'm still recovering from being sick. I mentioned that, right? I did. Okay. Anyway, the point of saying all that is that the car rides are the one occasion where I think, like, at least on top of my head, I can think of where that nagging productivity sense just goes away completely. Like, I'm sure I could find some childhood rude reason for that, but regardless, it's the case that the backseat car rides are just probably the most relaxing environment for me, that I'm aware of at least. So yeah, all I have to say, the car ride up was really nice. Once we got there, we just kind of sat around, and we did nothing most of the time. However, I did get to shoot David's semi-automatic IDK, what it is, some type of machine gun. I don't know guns. But I do know anime, so I'm going to identify this gun in the only way I know how. And it looks like that, a picture you can't see, but it's a picture of an anime gun, but not pink. It's also not exactly the same, but it's mostly like that. Anyway, it's a very fun gun to shoot, by far my favorite gun to shoot so far. It had hardly any recoil, and it was also semi-automatic, so that was, like, really fun because it was basically automatic. And it was just really enjoyable. Also, I beat David in a shoot-off. But only 1 round. We played 2 rounds, so it was a tie, technically. We also played some airsoft games, and those were fun. We made this game where one of us, me, had a flag, and the other players were trying to kill me and get the flag back to the respawn. However, because they were against one another as well as me, they were also trying to kill one another as they tried to kill me. So it made for some very interesting, like, political dynamics. Ben ended up winning it all in the end, but only because I was either a really bad shot or my gun failed on me, and I'm inclined to think it's the latter, but either is possible. And yeah, like, we all ran really hard the last game. It was a good time, but Ben ended up with, this nasty cough because he ran so hard. Because basically, like, we started at 2 different opposite sides of the property, and I got killed by one of the guys. I think it was Sam, and then I ran back to my respawn. Ben killed Sam, and so got the flag from Sam. And then I raced back up, and I got up to where Ben was, and, like, was totally within shooting range, and totally should have hit it. I don't know why I didn't, right? And then Ben hit me first, and then he got his flag to the respawn. But I totally should have hit him. Like, I have no understanding of why I did not succeed. Anyway, once again, for all that, we all just sat and listened to Aunt Becky read from these funny stories, which kind of actually reminded me of life emails in its style. Like, they're just a narration of life things, but exaggerated. Well, not like I exaggerate, okay? I am very realistic at all times, and neither do I make exuberant statements about ordinary things, okay? That's obviously false. But I'm just saying, if I exaggerate, that's it. It's a counterfactual, right? If it was the case that life emails were exaggerations, it would sound like life emails. There you go. What else? Let's see. Oh, I got to hear about Sam's traumatizing time in the Army. It actually sounded super horrible. I'm never going to join a military branch. And the only thing was we watched Emperor's New Groove. And despite that movie being like as old as I am, it's just so good. Like, it's such a solid movie. After that, what has become the traditional nightly this is important. Shenaniganery. First try. Took place. I also beat Mom on the existence of that word, which clearly I know because I said it so easily. Shenanigans. Shenanigans. Shenaniganery. First try. Anyway, I beat Mom on that word. She told me it wasn't a word, and it was a word. So, yeah. Anyway, the activities involved a lot of smacking each other with pillows, but there was also a lot of toe breathing that occurred. I don't need to describe that. So, yeah, that was interesting. And there was also a lot of sketch jokes, which I'm really not fond of. I didn't need to hear. However, other than that, the night was good. The other unfortunate part was it got really cold, and I only grabbed a really thin blanket for myself, so I didn't get to sleep very well that night. The next day, I woke up and just kind of sat around for breakfast. We all then helped set up the tents at the two tent platforms they have up there, one of which the squad is responsible for, and I might say the Wades do really enjoy our job that we did. Like, I think we did way better than Sam's drunk college buddies, which, it's not a particularly high bar, but still, like our tent platform is better. Although, to be honest, I actually took a look at both of them. I can't really tell the difference, so I'm just going to take their word for it. That is way better. Once we got those tents up, I then got to shoot David's gun some more, which was big fun, and then we drove home. Unfortunately, my stomach wasn't feeling so good, though, as we drove home, so it wasn't nearly as relaxing on the way up. But once we got back, I got to take a bath, and that made me feel better. I then helped Grace with some math that she had procrastinated on, and then did some small things to entertain myself, and then I started an anime which was absolutely fire. It's called Blue Lock. It's a soccer anime, and it's the first anime that had me hooked in like half a year. Actually fantastic. By the time it was time to go to bed, the anime got me actually so fired up, I went on a run, just because I was like, I'm so pumped, I can't sleep. So I just ran out of a run, out of compulsion. So yeah, it made me really want to play soccer again, too. In case you couldn't tell, I gave it a 9. It was a fantastic anime. Though, of course, once I expended the pent-up pump via the exertion of my legs, I slept. AKA, I was no longer pumped up, and I was tired, and I slept. Then one day I slept in. I did my typical work and classes. After that ended, I did homework and went to Ratchet. Went to talk to Alan after a bit before spending the rest of the night watching more Blue Lock. Tuesday was usual Tuesday. I reached Joe's house at the typical time, and there we did another mini Friends pre-release, as has become somewhat of a tradition, and that was good. And that night, I continued to feed my Blue Lock addiction. Wednesday morning, I had math tutoring. I picked up my clock, which, as you've already seen a picture of it, I don't need to repeat that. I ate food and watched some anime. I did really bad in that clock, by the way. Oh, I think I talk about that later. And then I used ChatGPT to help me write a paper, which was actually really great because, ChatGPT. But something crazy kind of happened. Now, I'm not, positive this rendition of it is correct upon a brief amount of research, but I'm going to share it this way anyway. So, ChatGPT isn't connected to the internet, so it can't actually cite sources. However, I was brand new to ChatGPT and I didn't realize that, so I asked for some sources. And it started off with this link to this source that was actually exactly what I'm looking for. And so it helped me with this by paper, right, by giving me the link. And so I kept asking for sources, but I became confused because none of the other links would work. But then, what I realized is it turns out the first thing it gave me, which is just, language generation, just so happened to be exactly the same as a real paper someone wrote. So it's not like ChatGPT actually knew this paper existed from its training data or anything like that. It just so happened that it made up a paper title for a particular journal with a particular name. And it happened to be the exact same as a real paper that someone really made for that particular journal with the exact same name later on. Like, what are the odds of that? So yeah, that was pretty crazy. But the article was really real, and so it was fantastic. It actually was exactly what I needed. So yeah, after that 1 in a million occurrence, I then did more classes, decided to approach some of my classmates about forming a team to work on the DiffyQ final project, and they agreed. And then I did work. I finished my Mech 208 paper, and then just chilled for a bit. After that, I then went to a review session for ECE before my dead brain finally made it back home, and then I joined the new Minecraft server that Neo had started. Then, of course, and as is practically mandatory at this point, I ended my day with some Blue Lock. The following morning, there's nothing final about it, my life continues on after this point, surprise, I took my ECE midterm, felt great, and this time I actually did great. I got a 94, baby. And that was when the average was like a 65, so that was actually really good. So yeah, I'd be more proud of that accomplishment if I weren't painfully aware that last semester I was the average. Actually, I was below the average at like a 54 or something. And so, retaking it, of course, I'm going to do better. But still, a victory is a victory. I then ate food and tried to get a hold of my DiffyQ lab partner, but that didn't work. And honestly, I don't know what else to say. I'm sure the day was normal. I forgot what else happened that day. Friday, I went to go do math torture, but to my chagrin, the torturing room was bereft of torture devices, despite the posted schedule, aka no one was there. And thus I went home, and since my stomach was hurting, I took a bath. I have a theory that like maybe my stomach hurts when I get stressed. I'm not sure, but there seems to be a correlation, so maybe that's it. Regardless, I chilled at home a bit before going to work and classes, and then, ironically, I learned nothing in DiffEQ or in dynamics because all I could think about was playing soccer later that evening. See, you don't fully understand how much I love Blue Lock. Like, it hyped me up for playing soccer so much. Like, it was just so good. Okay, I have a picture. You can't see it, but it's just fantastic. This show is just glorious. The actual anime is just, it's every soccer fan needs to watch it. So yeah, I knew the same thing would happen if I stayed for DiffEQ class because let's be honest, learning differential equations is not very interesting and it's pretty much the same as watching Paint Dry. And so I left early and went home and watched Blue Lock instead. And then once it was time to leave soccer, I was like shivering with excitement. I was that pumped. Then Benj and Ben joined me for soccer, and it was a ton of fun. And we found this other group of young adult guys that were pretty low skill level, like most people at Friday Night Soccer, like even for them, but low for me and Ben. And we fought against them, and then me, Benj, and Ben did all really well. We like, had some really good plays, and it was really fun to be back on the field. So yeah, it was great. Although I was actually so sore afterward, not even funny. On the way back, I intended to drop off Benj at the pizza movie night, but Ben and I ended up staying and eating pizza because, who could turn down free pizza and I'll just have food for us at home. So we were like, okay, we'll stay. I then got home and got to work on an AMV, and for the next like 6 hours, that's what I did. And there's the final product as a link, so you should watch it. It's really short; it's like a minute. So, and I think it's good. Obviously, I mean, maybe not. Obviously, I guess I could hate my own work, but I don't. So. The next day, I worked on some Magic deck building. Spontaneously joined Joe at Spencer's house. Spencer's Joe's friend, to try and check out their D&D campaign because Joe was like, "You should join." And I was like, "Okay." And so I contacted him like 10 minutes before the session started. I was like, "Is this still happening?" He's like, "Yes." And so I was like, "Okay, I'm coming." I just sat on the session, so I just kind of observed, which was kind of boring. But it did allow me to think of a character that would be a fit, a really like well with the vibe. So yeah, that was good. It's a very chaotic campaign Spencer's running, like very open world, and with players that are all really new, or at least act like they're new. They're just traditional murder hobo players. It's not a sophisticated campaign by any means, but it seems like it could be mildly interesting. It'll be my first time playing without structure, because John and Neo always have like a story that you have to follow more, and even if you choose your objective, they weave it in, and so it's the first time playing with a non-good character as well, so that'll be an interesting experience. Once I got back from that, I did Magic Card Starting before watching the Minion movie with the family, and I must say it was absolute garbage, like not even entertaining. I can't stress how bad movies are compared to most anime. And then I went on an AI frenzy, learning about all the cool AI tools and what they can do, and I'm hoping that this software called Descript could read my Life Email voice. Okay. I was hoping this software called Descript could read my Life emails in my voice, and then all I have to do was put it into text, but it turns out my voice is not the most fakeable. I've seen some people where it actually gives them a voice that's almost perfectly like theirs. But since I talk so quickly and I slur some of my words, and that Descript just kind of gave up. Like it only could translate half the words, and when it did translate, it didn't sound like me. So yeah, it was kind of funny. Apparently, having bad diction may actually be a boon for the rising world of AI, since you're really hard to deepfake. The next day, I went to church at Southgate and talked with Karen Lawless a bit. She's definitely an interesting person, I will say, even though she hasn't done interesting things as of late. And then, because I hadn't brought my Magic cards to church, I took a drive with Karina and Johanna to go back and grab my cards and just talk with them some. I honestly enjoyed that. I think it's more memorable than Magic. Once I got back, I, of course, played Magic, because that's why we went home and got Magic cards, and yeah. I then arrived at the Balance House for Neo's pseudo birthday. We did birthday-esque things and we played some Frisbee games where I almost always lost to Alan, although I did occasionally win. He's pretty good at Frisbee. Neo's parents were also there, and they were kind of sponsors for free food, so that was nice. It was a very small amount of food. And then, Neo, Alan, and I all played a game of Polytopia. That was fun. Once that ended, I watched a bit of anime with Grace and just worked on using some of the AI tools I found earlier to generate art that I've been wanting to for ages. I did that till like 12. But man, I was able to make some cool stuff. Like, if you haven't seen my new logo and stuff like that, you should look at the live email because this stuff is great. Like, I made a new insignia and it took a lot of tries, but I was actually pretty happy with the result. I made some other pictures and I'm going to be making more. So, I'm excited. Who needs to be an artist when you can just, make those kind of pictures by just typing in words? So cool. If you're interested in the AI I use, it's called Midjourney, and to my knowledge, it's the pretty standard edge of the field, at least as far as the public can get access to. It does cost $10, but you could make 270 something images, so effectively 2.7 cents a prompt, which when you're making images like this is much cheaper than hiring your artist friend. Which, trust me, I've done that. The other thing I did with AI was this face swap thing, which I'm not gonna lie, is pretty creepy. And by far the most disturbing / intriguing feature was, of course, the gender swap. So here's the image I gave it, which you can't see, but it's me. And here's the image I gave back, which is me but female. Which, I'm not gonna lie, I think I make a pretty attractive female. But I bet that's in large part due to the software, because when I put the female me back in to remailify myself, it didn't look like me at all. I mean, there was half my face covered by made up hair, so that was a bit of a hard feature for it to figure out. But it just wasn't me. So they probably just take whatever the objective attractive making features of the other gender and add them to you, regardless if you would actually realistically have them. But still, nonetheless, it's pretty trippy to see myself feminized. Honestly, kind of disturbing. However, the app also has some more pragmatic features, like seeing what you would look like with long hair, which I have a picture of. And I think it looks decent. Also with a beard. Man, think if I could grow a beard. And I'm actually pretty convinced that I would like a beard. But some counterfactuals are destined to remain counterfactuals, because that beard right there is out of pure mythology. At least currently, there is no way I could possibly grow that. All that I could grow would be a flowing mane of neck hair. Anyway, it was very interesting. Tangent to travel down. And I don't know. Do you guys think I should go for long hair? Because I'm thinking maybe so. Also, side comment, I never really saw this before, but I totally have a left lazy eye. I don't open my eyes to the same degree. They're open to different degrees. You'd wonder how, I never noticed that about myself until now. The next day I did math torture, watched a bit of anime as I ate, did work and school things, and just scraped by in all my progress with my CAD. Oh, not scraped. Scrapped my whole progress on my CAD model for the final project and started over. Then at Ratio, the higher-ups came, and it was awful. They totally ruined the whole session. And it was when new people were generally interested in Christianity they came. So, we brought new people and be like, it's your Q&A time! And they instead had to listen to a lecture about how the world is going to the trash by old people. And it genuinely hurt my soul. However, thankfully, I got a convenient excuse to leave, as William the Great Varley called, and had some philosophical questions. So instead, I talked to him about those for an hour and a half. However, during that conversation, I realized just how rusty I've gotten about all the non-Thomistic things. Utilitarianism and deontology, I haven't had those as live options for me in so long, since Thomism with natural law was really doing some good ethical work. And yep, I've kind of fallen out of practice concerning them. So yeah, realizing how much I'd forgotten was definitely pretty disturbing. Still, it was a good talk with William, and he had some good questions for sure. He began to go down the philosopher's path before my eyes, so that was pretty cool. I'm pumped for him. He's gonna have a hard road, but a good road. Once I returned to the Retro Christie room, it turned out the old guys were still rambling. So I just left. There was basically no point in me staying for that. Once I got home, Joe showed up and he helped me build my deck a little before we battled our decks off against one another. And despite Joe's deck having super expensive cards and mine being entirely made of bulk, my deck totally destroyed his in a 1v1. I mean, to be fair, his was built for multiplayer, but I'm still pretty happy with that result. Plus, I play a toxic deck, and it's just it's a nasty motif. To end that night, I experimented with one more AI tool, which I discovered in the craze of my AI research, and it's an AI that measures attractiveness. Honestly, it seems like there aren't many good AIs out there that actually are good at judging where you rank on the population scale, but this one seemed pretty legit. So, yes, it was partially out of pure curiosity, but it was also a pragmatic value that I did this, because, it's super proven that your physical attractiveness determines a lot of factors about social interaction. Thus, it seemed wise to me to know where I am on the scale so I can act appropriately. It's like a first impression fitness test. It tells you where you are, and so you can use that benchmark to set reasonable goals. Also, I figured if, I, against my expectations, ranked highly, then it might be worth my time to, invest into trying to have a fashion style and, leverage my looks. Yeah. Also, I found AI fashion tools, too, if you're interested. But, yeah, I ranked averagely, so, not much point in trying to polish a mad diamond. But that's good, because I expected myself to rank averagely, and I probably wouldn't have believed it if I didn't rank averagely. Yeah. Anyway, so that was my motivation, and it turned out that the latter case, me ranking averagely, was true. I'm apparently a solid 6.7 on the scale of male attractiveness, according to just the face, not counting, my teeth things and, various, hairstyles or anything like that. It's just, your facial features that are innate to your face. 6.7. So, that's the top range of the average area. So, yeah, not horrible. See, how the tool works is actually a bunch of previous survey data. I assume from peer-reviewed studies, but I didn't check it out if it was peer-reviewed. Basically, where male and females rank faces on a scale of 1 to 10, and they say, how attractive a face is. And so those studies, of course, vary things like face shape, eye distance, nose, mouth distance, etc. And are basically able to formulate, optimal values and states of affairs for what people would perceive as maximally attractive, as far as, facial features, with, separate criteria for males and females, obviously. Then the AI identifies where your face lies on each of those two spectrums, and, generates a composite score of your face attractiveness based on the scientifically proven matrices. And so, yeah, I gave it 10 different images, and, I was sure to like vary my angle of picture and my expression widely, and it gave me a score that varied by about 0.5%. Well, not 0.5%. I guess it'd be 5%, but it's 0.5 on the scale of 1 to 10, with my average being around 6.7. So it turns out if you give it a face where you're like doing weird stuff, then yep, your attractiveness goes down. But anyway, the AI seemed pretty consistent and legit, so I surmised that my facial attractiveness is probably for real on the high end of considered average by most people. At least, taking none of the other factors like clarity of skin or whatever else into consideration. And so yeah, that's pretty useful information, and has genuinely affected a few things in my life. It's given me a good reason not to invest in fashion too, because no point. Anyway, the next day I had class. I got a small break before going into my CAD lab, but honestly, I just screwed myself over because for some reason I chose an Oculus controller to model for my CAD lab. And if you know what an Oculus controller looks like, there is not a more regular or whack controller in existence. Like, everything about the controller was so hard to model. Heck, they even put the handle at a 5 to 8 degree angle from perpendicular to the head. Like, why? What was that really necessary for? Like, I feel like whoever was originally tasked with modeling this controller was told, just make it weird. Like, add 10 weird features so our competitors can't copy us. It was just such a pain to model in so many ways. After lab, I went to work. I tried to get SolidWorks to download on my computer, but I kind of failed, as I had to use this fancy license the school had apparently given me, though of course I didn't know that until, just then. And I could have used the license the entire time, but I wasn't aware. So, yeah, the fact that, that was the case was a little bit sad, but I was like, well, I'm going to still get the license anyway. So, yeah, I tried to download it, it didn't work very well. I then attended Neo's legit birthday party and ate really good bacon-wrapped jalapeno peppers. Like, holy cow, Sydney's jalapeno poppers are glorious. Very good. Then, per Neo's birthday request, we all played with Diablo for like 4 hours or something. It's not my favorite game, but it wasn't a bad time. I think my big problem was just that, like, with my knowledge of the game, it's just button mashing for me. Like, you could have a random robot randomly hit buttons, and they would perform as well as I do. Then, once I finished that, I went home and went to bed. The next morning, I worked on DiffyQ with the math project with the teammates, which I had acquired previously. I then did my work and had my classes, but I skipped math because that class was really not very informative, and since we were in the final stretch, it wasn't like it was, missing much anyway. I then went to Neo's where I worked on some more modeling of the stupidly hard Oculus controller, and then I took a break for some anime food, and then I got back to modeling. And actually, I have pictures. You should see the pictures of my model. I think I did decent, honestly. Like, the bottom part isn't circular. Like, it looks like it would be circular, but it's actually an oval. There's just so many features like that. Anyway, if you could see the pictures, you would see that I messed up in a few areas overall, but overall, I think I did well. The other thing to keep in mind is that, it's all modeled with surfaces. Like, not a single solid body was used, which makes it way harder, Anyway, by the time that was done, I was like 9:30, so I finished the general body and, like, called it a day. And then I played Magic with Neo till like 11, and I went home, and then I generated more AI images. The next day, after my morning session of classes, I did things around the house and cleaned my Rocket Notebook for, like, an hour. I mean, to be fair, I had to put all the notes into Drive first. That was a good chunk of the time. But still, it's an hour to get it reset, which is making me wonder if these notebooks are worth it, because, like, an hour's a while. I then went back to school, did some pseudo-math tutoring, but basically not math tutoring, and then did voice training with Sydney. And I'm pretty sure we did harmonization, which was actually really cool. She's starting to teach me how to harmonize, which is very fancy. After that, I left because I had to do homework, and I think that's why I left, but I'm not entirely sure. I did that until like 9, and then I sorted instrumental music and made AI art. Friday morning, I got to sleep in, which was very nice. I then did the usual, with the exception of skipping DiffyQ. However, I did take an extra hour, or I took that extra hour, and the very, very nice day that presented itself to me. And I went and walked in the creek. And honestly, it was a really good time. Just listening to, quality instrumental music and walking in a creek can be very enjoyable. Generally, I think it's a shame that when you get older, things like walking down a creek just don't occur to you as live options, like they did when you were small. I think, there's some serious value to breaking out of our day-to-day habits and doing childish things like walking down a creek. But, maybe that's just me. Anyway, along with my creek venture, I found a crawdad, which you could see if you saw the pictures. And he apparently had a hard life because he was missing an arm, so I didn't abuse him too much. However, catching him was probably one of the easiest things I've ever done in my life. Like, at that moment, all my childhood respect for Ben just evaporated. Because, see, believe it or not, I never caught a crawdad. Okay, drink of water. I never caught a crawdad before with my bare hands because I was like, it'll pinch me. And, whenever Ben would do it, I'd be like, wow. But it turns out that these guys are not hard to catch at all. And if you grab them in the place where I did, they can't pinch you. They can't reach you. So the experience was enlightening in numerous ways. I also found like $3 in coins, which was tossed over a bridge. And they were old. That was cool. And I also found a bunch of large water pipes going around the city. So that was pretty fancy. though I didn't go very far in exploring them because it wasn't my goal and it was also painful to crawl around because it was concrete. And, I want to go back with Benzo and explore those. And then among my other notable experiences, I found very deep mud. I actually almost got stuck. Like, it went up to past my mid-thigh, and the spot was also deceptive because the water was only like 2 inches deep, so you're like, there's no way the mud's that deep. So, how was I supposed to know? And yeah, that concludes all the mildly novel things that happened in my creek adventures. Otherwise, it was just a lot of walking in water, pushing through foliage, listening to fantastic music, and yeah, nice days. After about 2 hours, Dad came to pick me up, and yep, that was good. Oh, Mom also had a tooth abscess, though. Dad picked me up from getting her medications, that's why I remembered. Do you remember the thing I had like a year back that was the worst, like probably the worst pain I've experienced in my life? Yeah, well, apparently Mom had something like that, and they actually couldn't save the tooth, so they ended up pulling it. So she was in a ton of pain in that situation. That just overall sucked. Though to be honest, she handled it way better than I did. Or she was in less pain, one of the two. Once I got home, we all had food, and we watched some YouTube videos with trying to distract Mom from her excess tooth pain. And then we gave her, then I gave her access to my Ultimate Peace playlist, which is the composite playlist I mentioned before from the Vibe session, which has all my favorite songs. And she said that playlist, was the only thing that made her driving home from Denver bearable. So, I was really glad I was able to help her with that. Other than that, I gave her the playlist actually before she got back, because she finished the surgery once she got back. Other than that, I just built magic decks, did AI art stuff, and discovered that I had aced my ECE second midterm, so that felt great. The next day was Saturday, and though I knew the week thereafter was going to be hellish, I only did a little bit of work on the case study that was due next week because, I was tired of doing homework, and so instead I spent the day playing Minecraft and listening to Passive Class. There was some very interesting stuff said, by the way, on the Shroud of Turin, so I might look into that sometime. Sunday I felt sick, so I took it really easy. I actually learned that resting is super helpful when you're trying to get over sickness. I mean, it might seem obvious, but in the past, as long as I was still functional, I would just carry on with life as normal. But as of late, whenever I get sick, I go into a hyper rest mode, and it actually makes the whole scenario so much better for my future self. Yeah, there you go. Anecdotal evidence. Rest when you feel sick. Although I guess that's kind of obvious. I built some magic decks in the sun for a few hours, and actually found out I got sunburned from that later. And then I spent a lot of time playing Minecraft, listening to Python Aquinas. And then I also listened to some Dr. Stone. I watched some Dr. Stone with Mom. And then after dinner, I did more Minecraft, and then I spent the rest of the day watching science videos and trying to figure out if an AI could trace docs for me. Unfortunately, the options are pretty limited in that regard. There are a few platforms that actually have something along the lines of what I was looking for, and there are actually very few that allow the AI to enter and exit the stock market. Mostly they just have the AI systems tell you, this would probably be a good time to buy, but you have to do all the trading yourself. Also, even with those few that do allow the process to be fully automated, from the reviews I watch, the bots don't perform very well. So, at least from what I can tell, the stock market is not yet where AI has flourished, and thus I must either become very knowledgeable or devote a ton of time if I want to actually make money there, and so it's probably not going to happen. So I was kind of hoping, just buy an AI bot and have it do the work for you. But apparently, it's not quite there yet. Monday was packed. I did math tutoring in the morning. I had a cough and still felt sick, but it was the week before finals, and it was the week when basically all my projects were due, so I was like, well, couldn't not do that, so I went to school anyway. So I had no choice but to push through. However, thankfully, I did feel somewhat better as the day wore on. I did a bunch of homework that day. However, I would usually go to Ratio, but I didn't because Neil and John were like, don't contaminate our underlings, and so instead I stayed home and worked on magic decks. I also hung out with Grace, sorta, kinda, in addition to other things. And I also learned how to create better AI images. But then I ran out of credits, which is kind of funny, because they only give you so many credits. Alright, break 2. I need to blow my nose again. Getting there. Nearing the end. Okay. Tuesday, I felt pretty bad. But I basically ignored that feeling and went to lecture. But in EC, I ignored the lecture too. I was like, well, I'm not going to pay attention to this lecture. I'm just going to do homework. And I definitely should have paid attention because my later test score did not do well. I then got close to finishing the project for some class, and then after that, I totally failed the part 1 of my CAD test, but for dumb reasons. See, the test is just a software you download on your personal computer that lets you test on the computer, right? But because it was my personal computer and not a school computer, SolidWorks was different. And thus, when I was wanting me to use a certain material to give my answers, which I can't actually answer the question without, I thought my personal computer didn't have the material. When it actually did have the material, it was just under a slightly different name. Thus, I wasted a non-negligible amount of time just trying to find some material and be like, I can't answer the question for my final. And so, of course, likely because I couldn't find, the material and I was stressed, I made errors in the models I made while trying to find the material and not yet having it. And so I spent way too much time trying to make like a tangent curve when I could just made a 3-point arc. It was the same thing in all practical purposes. Anyway, what happened is I just ended up taking too long on the first 4 problems, and so I wasn't able to, answer the last 2 problems. But what was really dumb, and the thing I'm mostly like really big salty about, is that the last 2 problems were worth half the grade. So it was worth the same amount as the 4 problems. And so even though I got all 4 problems perfectly correct, I only got a 50%. And that's the other dumb thing. Like, I knew how to do everything on the test. Like, part of the test, which is harder, by the way, I got a literal perfect score. A perfect score with 30 minutes to spare. Like, that's not easy to do. But it's just because I freaked out in the first test and didn't use my time well and was like, oh no, I can't answer the questions, that I got a grade that was a 50%. And the dumb thing is you need to get a 70% or above on both parts of the test to get the certification. And so even though I got over a 70% on the total test, I didn't get 70% above on both parts of the test. And so, yep, I didn't get the certification, which, helps you get hired for internships and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was dumb. Also, it brought my A in the class down to a B, that's 75. And I totally could have gotten a perfect score on both tests. Like, I didn't mess up a single problem. It's just I ran out of time. So, yeah, that's super sucked. Once I got home, I watched anime and self-pity, and then went over to Joe's houses for typical Tuesday night things and watched some Bofuri and played Magic. Wednesday, I did math early in the morning, and I worked with my teammates to get the DiffyQ project done. Just jump ahead a bit, we actually got a 95 in the end, so we did really well. But yeah, worked on that with them. I then did some extra credit for my Mech 200B class, which is the one where I failed the Croc project, which I told you I'd mention later, and now this is later. So I got actually 51% on that Croc project, which was just dumb. The reason was because I apparently systemically measured things wrong. Like, for every part you got out of tolerance, they took off 10% of your grade, and it turns out either my calipers were wrong or something. Because I thought I triple checked all my parts were in tolerance. But then when I turned it in, and after I turned it, I was like, all my parts were out of tolerance by about the same amount too. So I must just be bad at reading calipers or something. I don't know. Anyway, yep. And then I got accused of cheating, which was crazy. Like, he was saying I faked a crib shift when I actually did the crib shift. And honestly, it was a super weird experience for me. Like, I can't remember the last time, if anyone has ever accused me of lying. Like, everyone who knows me just knows lying is something I do. Like, I'm extremely adverse to lying. And so no one ever doubts me on that front. And so to have someone accuse me of not telling the truth, for perhaps the first time I can even remember, really messed with me. I mean, like, he was able to figure out that I actually did the crib shift, not because I had some kind of, like, proof. I was kind of just, like, shocked he accused me of lying and kind of speechless. But rather because when he gave his evidence, he was like, oh yeah, that evidence is kind of bad and inconsistent. But despite that, the whole event really messed with me. Like, I know I did the crib shift, but, I mean, not only do I recall like that I actually did it, but I had the proof in these life emails. But for the entire rest of the day, I was like, did I lie about that? And it was just the weirdest experience. It must be like how gaslighting feels, like how it feels to be gaslighted. Like, I promise you that I was there, but the fact that someone doubted me makes me feel like I maybe wasn't. And maybe they know something I don't. Maybe I'm just deceiving myself, etc. It's honestly the strangest thing. I've never felt so uncertain about that which I was intellectually certain of before. So, the moral of the story is, don't ever accuse me of lying, because apparently it will seriously mess up my psyche for, like, actual days. Or, I don't know, maybe do accuse me of lying so I can get exposure to therapy and not therapy, and, like, not have this really whack reaction, even when I know you're wrong. Whatever the moral is, it was an extremely unpleasant and surprising experience. That's the rest of the day that was on my mind. But aside from that, I did my classes and did homework and all that jazz. Once I got home, I got Mom started on Midjourney, so she too could make AI art. And then I went to Neo's, where we watched some anime, and then ate Panera. After that, Neo, Sydney, Joe, Benj, Noah, and I all played Emperor over at Joe's house, which was a special game mode commander. I already said that. And then once I got home, I had the spontaneous desire to thank my front-range physics teacher. But despite like half an hour of searching, I wasn't able to find her contact info, so I guess that wasn't meant to be. Then after that, I went to sleep. The following Tuesday, I had most classes as normal, though it was my last ECE and Mech 200A class, so that was nice. I also had my last Mech 200B lab where it turned out, where I turned in my screwdrivers, and I got a 92, not a 92, an 82 on those. So not horrible, like solid range. I then worked on my Mech 200A final project before and during the time at work. Once I got home from school, I watched a bit of anime, ate some food, and then I went back to campus for ECE final review, which only had like 5 students in attendance, which was very surprising. And which I thought I understood, so I left early. Clearly a mistake. I then talked to Mom before starting an anime called Eminence in Shadow. And don't ever watch Eminence in Shadow, by the way. It's by far the most sketchy anime I've ever seen. I regret sticking around and watching it as long as I did. The thing was, like, my Alan, had talked up so much, and, like, it honestly lived up to his report in a lot of ways. It had a very interesting concept. So I tolerated way more sketch than I should have before realizing it was just garbage. I swear I'd wait for my screen for, like, 2 entire episodes. So yeah, after I did what I should have done 3 episodes before, I dropped the show. And that was very sad, because, it had started really clean, and it had a really interesting premise. So, yeah. Anyway, sketchy anime aside, the next day I woke up early enough, because my cough was so bad. So, like, I woke up at, like, 7 or something, because I woke up coughing. And I still felt sick at this point, but, I couldn't do anything about it. I just had a really nasty cough. I then used the 2 extra hours that morning to do work on homework, and I also took a bath. And thankfully, I was actually able to get the final touches done on my Mech 280 project. And after that, I ate food, and then I spent like 5 hours at work for the HES Fest, which is basically like an end-of-the-year semester celebration that Health and Exercise Science Department puts on. And I almost crashed into a car with a golf cart, so that was fun. Once work was finally over, I came home, took a bath, watched some anime, then worked on this Live email before watching some Dr. Stone, a science anime with Mom and Dad, and then going to sleep. The next day was Saturday, and I survived Death Week, so that was a very big yay. I woke up at 8 and drove to Deep Voice Noah's house, from which me and him carpooled to this cabin that one of Noah's friends owns up in the mountains. It was a pretty cool environment. We played Airsoft there, and it was actually, like, a pretty big difference because it was so dense that it meant, like, a lot of up-close and thereby painful shots occurred. Still, it was a good time. It was good to change up the environment. However, we stayed there till, like, 3, and I'm almost certain I got dehydrated because I had a bad headache for the next, like, few days. Still, it was a good time. Also, at one point, we had to help the cabin guy haul concrete bags as kind of like payment for us letting use this place. And I realized I am very weak. Like, I really struggle with those 80-pound bags. And while I was able to haul the bags that were allowed to me, doing so pushed my arms to, like, the edge of their ability. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised I used my arms for basically nothing. But it was still kind of disappointing. You're just like, I want to be inherently strong, masculine man. Even if all my arms do is hit spike balls. Anyway, on the way back, Noah showed me this artist isn't too bad, and it also happened that it's now on my not too bad playlist, which is currently 53 hours, by the way, if anyone's curious. Once I got home, I took a shower and talked with William, and then I watched some more Dr. Stone with Mom and Dad while making chainmail, and yeah, I'm still doing that, by the way, just very, very slowly. And then I went to sleep. Sunday, I went to church, played some Magic, and also taught Katie how to play Magic, did D&D, after which I went on a walk over to City Park with Neo and Sydney, as well as John, I think. And while laying upon the grass, we had a very long conversation about cats. Particularly the nature of cats. I'm not entirely sure what the point was, but it happened. I then came home to watch some Dr. Stone with the family, and then went to bed. Monday arrived, and the final week of school began. I woke up at 9 to go over to the library to share my presentation with some of my classmates, because we had to do that, and that was fine. I then ate food, came back, and did work for 5 hours, during which I studied and did homework. What homework remained. And then once I was finally released, I went over to Joe's house, where we bought and made our own food, as well as made many decks out of the bulk we purchased. And while it was a good idea, the problem was there was a lot of light, and so we always kind of made lifelink decks, and thus the games took forever to finish. After that, we went and played some spikeball and then volleyball at Rollermore Park, and I really enjoyed that. And once we got back, we worked on deck building some more, and then Seth, Noah, Sam, and I all played our deck sketch. Tuesday, I got to sleep in, which was very nice. I took my dynamics exam, which I did horribly in, but me doing horribly meant I did about average, like 2 points below. So yeah, that was a bummer because my A- became a B+. I then went to the EMEC and did a largely pointless end of semester cleaning assignment for about 3 hours, but if I didn't do it, I would auto-fail because, like everything else in Mech 200B, if you don't do it, you automatically fail. So I did it, and then I went back to work after that. And then I went back to Joe's house to face off our decks against one another, and those were some very long two-headed giant games. Like, after we played, like, I don't know, a few games, we then went and played 6-person spikeball, which worked remarkably well. And we also discovered that I'm the Mosquito King. And then after we finished out the night by some more two-handed giant games, and those took just so long. Like, I can't underestimate. No, I can't understate the length of those games. The next day, I worked on the final math project with Evan for 2 hours. Then around 12 o'clock, Evan, thankfully, discovered the project was actually due at 1 p.m. instead of the previous 12 a.m. due date. Which, who makes a due date for 1 p.m.? Like, that's a weird due date. And so we all just, like, scrambled to finish it and finally got done, but just barely in time. I then spent the rest of the day at work working on life emails, and I also discovered my boss, Jess, won't be there for my future semesters. She actually got another job offer at the Front Range Community College, and it pays, like, a lot more, so she decided she's going to take it. So yeah, that's a bit sad. Mostly because who knows what my new boss will be like, and if she'll let my cushy job remain cushy, or she'll make me actually work, Which, granted, is certainly within her rights, but it's just, I kind of like my paid homework time. Thank you very much. Then once I got home, I sat on the front porch with the rainy weather setting in, and I worked on this for quite a few hours. However, during that process, a person from Anime Club sent out an offer for free anime trading cards, because apparently those are a thing, and thus, for no particular reason, I biked over and sorted through 5,000 anime cards. I don't really know why I did it. I mean, what am I going to use those cards for? But some of them that I end up choosing do look really cool, so I guess I just wanted an excuse for a break after live emailing for so many hours. Of course, once I got back, I went back to working on live emails. After I got some food, watched a bit of anime, and took my EC final, which I got a 73 in, which is not great. I still got an A in the class though. Okay, that's all that matters. I was doing quite well up to that point. I then finally started making another AMV, but it ended up just being a lot of clip gathering because I was like, I need some new content. The next morning, I took the second part of the CWSA exam. It's a CAD exam, and I got that perfect score I mentioned earlier. I then returned my rental books and got paid $85, so that was sweet. I then went out to Five Guys with my dad, and we talked, and then I had my last shift at work for the semester. Oh, I lost my spot. After that, I went over to Neo's and Sydney's, and we walked in the rain. And to be fair, I actually applaud them for doing so, because I didn't really expect them to actually be down. But they were down, and it was nice, although Sydney looked quite cold. So she stuck it out for my sake. Good job, Sydney. I think I've dressed Sydney particularly 3 times this email. I don't think she even reads these emails. I don't know why I've done this. I then did my usual thing with Neo, where we got food and watched anime, and then thereafter, Neo talked about all the things that he had done, and what he was planning to do with Minecraft for like an hour, and he was very enthusiastic. After that, I got home and joined the revitalized Aristocracy Minecraft group, where Katie, Liam, and I all caught up. However, I didn't actually end up playing Minecraft because Katie, in an effort to provide a reward that would sufficiently motivate me, pledged to watch the entirety of the My Little Pony series if I could find the 7 pony signs she'd hidden throughout my castle a while back. So great was the reward that I spent the next 4 hours looking for those signs. And I found them! Well, I found 6 of them in like the first hour, but the last one took me ages. It was just so long. However, just as the Minecraft time was wrapping up, I finally managed to catch, out of the corner of my eye, the characteristic teal color of the blue sign. And, in so doing, I sealed Katie's fate. However, due mostly to availability, I only made her watch the first 4 seasons of the childhood show, because, that was always available on Netflix. Now, the first thing that was deeply surprising about that, whole situation was that Katie finished the entire 4 seasons of My Little Pony in a week. That's a lot of My Little Pony. So I'm both impressed and a little bit disturbed. But that entire week, I kept getting so many Discord messages complaining about this or that aspect of the show. To quote Lamentations 3 at 22 through 23 in the Katie translation, "The steadfast complaint of a woman never ceases. Her grumblings never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is her persistence." Some could say it's just a female translation, not the Katie translation, but a wise and prudent man that I am, I would never dare suggest such a thing unless I offend all my female readers. So yeah, there is an exorbitant amount of My Little Pony in Katie's week, and vicariously in mine too. So yeah, after we wrapped up the Minecraft, Liam and I decided to do a short anime quiz where he destroyed me, always deeply vexing, and then I slept, musing about my defeat. Friday, I woke up and tried to get this label printer Dad had bought to work, and it was so much more difficult than it needed to be. I ended up spending 2.5 hours just trying to get the thing to print the right size labels, and I even talked to a representative of the company, and at one time he hijacked my computer to try and figure out what the problem was. Also, side note, if you never had anyone remotely control your computer, it's a weird experience. It kind of feels like someone's controlling your hand, or at least it did for me. Maybe it's just because, I use my computer so often, and maybe that's a problem. So, I don't know. But, it was a trippy experience. After getting it to print the right size label, I stopped working for an anime reset, and then went to soccer at Loveland Sports Park, because, Blue Lock and soccer, we're buds. We played this game in the center circle that was actually really fun. It was a 4-on-4, and it was a lot of close footwork and not my skill set, but just good. It was totally different, and maybe use skills I'd not used in a long time. I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, there was an official game going on the pitch, going up on the pitch, being played on the pitch. That's how I should say that. So we had to get off, and that's when we called it a day. Once I got home, I took a shower and went over to Sydney's house to help her draw on eggs. And then once I finished, I watched some My Little Pony with Grace, both because Grace wanted to, go to do a blast in the past, and I wanted to see if Katie's complaints were justified. And honestly, though it pains me to say it, I think they were. I can grant that, I gaze at My Little Pony through a nostalgia-colored lens. But upon rewatching it, even though I could see it was pretty bad, honestly, probably most of Kate could play just fine, but it's not. I'm not fully agreeing. Right? It's probably a 6 out of 10 kid show, and she thinks it's worse than that. So it was a little bit disappointing to discover that Katie was mostly right, but I'm kind of hoping that if I watched more, which I'm not going to do. Okay, just making that clear. It would grow on me. Who knows? But anyway, yep. I was hoping it'd be good as I remembered it being, and it wasn't, and that was sad. Thus, after Grace and I watched Kung Fu Panda, after that, Grace and I watched Kung Fu Panda 3, while I chainmailed and she embroidered, and that show is also garbage, so don't worry, watch it, it's bad. But then we rewatched some Akibi's Sailor Uniform, a slice of life anime that I've given a 9, thus making it my 7th 9 out of the 122 anime I've completed this far. And gosh, that show is fantastic. I mean, it's a slice of life, so if you don't like slice of life, then you won't like Akibi's, but it's masterfully done, slice of life. Just instills peace in my bones, that show. Anyway, with that, the day came to a close, and another was prompted to begin. The next morning, I did my quiet time because I could. I then worked on creating PDFs for so many labels with this label printer that I set up earlier, and I did so for actually like 5 hours straight, and my wrist shoulder got sore from just clicking the same things over and over again. However, during the entire time of label making, I also sorted through a ton of instrumental songs. Thus, my playlist got significantly larger. And while I have no idea how many hours they are in total, the number they increased by was approximately 10, as I listened to about half of each song while placing them, and I worked for about 5 hours. After I finally finished that, I started watching Blue Lock with Mom and Dad, and Mom seemed to like it, so we'll probably watch more of that show later. That evening, I got to catch up with Jordan, because, now finals are done, and I finally had time, and that was good. Oh, I should also share my final grades. They are as follows. Mech 200B, a C, the one C I got. ECE 204, the class I retook, an A. Math 340, DiffyQ, a B. Civ 260, Dynamics, a B+. Mech 200A, an A. And Mech 201, which is the CAD class, a B. So yeah, overall pretty good. I did get one C, but it was in one credit class, so it's really just like a B- as far as my GPA is concerned. And the big thing for me is I got to get an A in the class I failed last year, ECE. So that was epic. And yeah, it was pretty rewarding to see those grades come in, because I actually worked so hard for them. And since I'm averaging around a B+, A-, that means my GPA will go up, and I don't have to worry about losing my scholarships, and it's also like a really big relief, because that means I have a better chance of getting a job later. So yeah, there you go. The reward for way too much work is 6 letters. Really feels meaningful when you put it like that. After talking with Jordan, I spent the rest of the night working on an AMV that I started a while back, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and there's a link to it. The next day was church, so I didn't stick around as usual because it was Mother's Day. So next day was church, but I didn't stick around as usual because it was Mother's Day. And we decided to take Mom out for dinner. However, I misunderstood just when that was taking place, and so I left church immediately, only to have to wait for like 45 minutes for Mom and Dad's church service to end. So that kind of sucked. But still, it worked out, and we all saved, then got to have some food together. However, after that, I went to Neo's because I thought we were going to D&D, only to arrive and Neo be like, D&D's canceled, and me be like, oh, and then walk back home. And it was then that I learned the Myers clan was over the Jameses, so I decided to do a vibe session and walk over in the rain to Joe's house. And gosh, I cannot stress enough how nice that walk was. I mean, first of all, rain is great. But second, walking in that beautiful environment with fantastic instrumental music is just the absolute best. I need to find a vibe session buddy who enjoys it as much as I do. But so far my search just seems unprofitable. Like, I'm looking for such a strange person. I find some people that madly enjoy it, but they just don't seem to get the true essence of the vibe. It's sad. Anyway, it was really nice. And then, once I got the Jameses, I found Katie and Karina. Nope, that's not it. I found Joe and Karina walking in the water, so I joined them. And then after a while, we all headed inside, and from there we decided to go back outside to play a game of Ultimate Frisbee in the rain, which was pretty fun. My team started off by dominating, but then the opposing team made an epic comeback and actually took the win by the end, by a single point. Once we drove back, we did ride back, but once we returned to the house the second time, I played a bit of Magic with Sam before Grace drove me and my wet personage home. I then helped Mom learn Midjourney some more, and I did some Midjourneying myself since I wanted to make a picture of my new AMV, because I was like, maybe I could use some SEO principles and make it be found, but the answer was no. I figured, I'd give it some keywords to see if it would reach a larger audience, and the answer was just it did the worst I'd ever done. So, yep, that's kind of ironic. See, it would be cool if my AMVs took off, but I'm really just doing it because I like it. So, if they do or if they don't, I'm going to make them. Simple as that. Maybe some point I'll market them in the world. Then, after posting that AMV, I watched the 6th season of My Hero until midnight. The next day, I started off with some much-needed introspection. I then began reading a 500-ish page book. I wrote 600, but it's more like 550. Working through the historicity of the Gospels. And after reading some, I then joined Joe for his trip to Udall's house, where we played Magic at the Smith's house. And Joe fulfilled his cat sitting duties. After that, we got back, and I went to Alan's Rashocracy end of the year party, where we all played chess. So people played me in chess, and then I lost to Ethan again, which was super dumb because I was actually doing really well, and at the very end, I made such a dumb mistake. And then right after that, we played a game of Speed Seek, where John actually put on a legit ghillie suit. I totally thought he was joking when he said he was breaking out his ghillie suit. And despite having, 15 minutes, I didn't actually catch any of them, so it's not like it mattered. But he actually put on a real ghillie suit, so that's kind of funny. And it was honestly, pretty pitiful on my part. Probably my worst performance thus far. Still, I did get quite close on a few occasions, and I really blame my rollerblades. They're so loud. So, I had a good time, though, and nothing was lost, so it's not like it was a poor decision. Once I got home, I finished the day by reading out some more of my book. The next morning, I read for 2 hours, took a food break, worked on this life edema for 2 hours, and then put on some Pints of Aquinas and played around campus, trying to get to all the places I haven't seen as much. So, I can recognize them better. AKA, I was training for the next Speed Seek game, so I won't be defeated so soundly. Then once I got back, I read some more until it was time to go to Joe's house for the typical Disney activities. And however, since Noah was gone, we decided we'd watch anime. And this time, we also did that. We watched anime in addition to our Magic games. Oh, and Benji and I got the God tier Wendy's drink. We watched Jujutsu Kaisen 0. Wednesday was mostly spent reading. I took a 2-episode break for anime and food, but then got right back at it. And then took another break for a one-on-one game of Speed Seek with Benj, wherein he lasted exactly 52 minutes before I got him. And he gave me bad pictures, super obscure. And then I spent time watching anime with a fan before in Neo's house for a typical Wednesday night hangout. We walked in Supers, got food, and then Neo made guac for me, but it had cilantro. And apparently cilantro is horrible. It's a leaf of death. I had the same demon as my mom, we surmised, that makes it taste really bad, because it was gross and, pervasive among the guac, despite its very not large, miniature quantity, small quantity. Hence, I just ended up eating chips and salsa. And after that, we played Minecraft together. Well, together. I placed it together in quotation marks because we were in the same room, but very little communication occurred. We mostly just did our own things. As for yesterday, I read for 3 hours until I got a text from Joe asking for moving help. The Jameses are moving. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, apparently after, not moving in his entire life, which is impossible for me to imagine in the first place, Joe and his family are moving to Loveland. So it's kind of crazy. And also unfortunate for me because being so close to him was deeply convenient. But yeah, I came over, and with great difficulty, I was able to move with Joe some big furniture. Then Joe decided to join me for a spontaneous rain walk, which involved unpaved mud trails, mud hills, and very many pretty sights, and I really enjoyed it. Honestly, probably one of my favorite memories, which is me and Joe. It was pretty much the ideal way to spend the afternoon for me. Once we got back, Joe's mom's needed his car, so I agreed to take him to Noah's house for his cat duty. And there, I just read some more while he watched anime. I then came back to his house, faced off some of my magic checks against him, before going back to my house for the appointed time at dinner. Mom then found these very fancy chicken nuggets that taste a lot like Chick-fil-A nuggets at Sam's Club, and they were fantastic. And then we watched Dr. Stone as a family before I joined the new Thursday night routine Minecraft call. And that was how I rounded the day. And with that, I have finally finished what will once again be another massive life email. This breaks the record by a landslide. It's getting a little absurd. This is half the length of my first novel. I really need to rethink my process. I mean, it's not like I wanted to write them this way. I just genuinely didn't have time during the semester. And at least be grateful that I got a life email done during spring break, because otherwise the length would have been literally a novel. Anyway, I think the number above provides ample evidence that I've said enough already. For everyone in New Zealand, in case I didn't tell you, I'm coming over on the 15th of June to the 31st of July, so send me an email, and we can make a meetup happen, and that would be fantastic, and I want to see everyone again. For everyone in America, I'll obviously be gone then, although for Americans, the dates are the 13th of June to the 1st of August, because, time. And that's all I have to say. Do not die. Live forever, or as long as you can. It's 2 hours. Farewell!